Chapter 130. In the beginning, after Yi Wuxiang fell in the battle with the Demon Emperor, all the warriors of the Temple League wore white scars on their heads and mourned for him. It was also because of that battle that the status of the Warrior Temple rose sharply in the Alliance. Unfortunately, for hundreds of years, the Warrior Temple did not have a genius like Yi Wuxiang. This was the first time that Long Haochen saw the statue of Yi Wuxiang. His appearance was not as outstanding as his reputation. He looked just like an ordinary person. The statue was carved with the posture of Yi Wuxiang, holding a sword horizontally in front of his chest, faintly exuding a domineering spirit. However, after a short look, Long Haochen shook his head gently. Su Zhongyang's face changed. Captain Long Haochen sighed. This statue is a pity. It did not carve Senior Yi Wuxiang's sword intent. This statue is just a dead object. In fact, this statue of Yi Wuxiang was already a master's work, but Long Haochen had seen better ones. At the end of the first floor of the Tower of Eternity, the statue of the holy law god of necromancy, the sleeping calamity Electrolux, had really touched him too much. It perfectly reproduced the powerful aura of a holy law god, and even its demeanor and thoughts were revealed. It was like a real person. In contrast, this statue of Yi Wuxiang was naturally much worse. After listening to Long Haochen's words, Su Zhongliang's good impression of him disappeared immediately. He said in a deep voice, "Captain Long, please don't criticize the hero statue of our warrior temple. Otherwise, even if you are a demon hunter, I will still challenge you, in order to maintain the dignity of the warrior temple." Long Haochen was slightly stunned. Only then did he realize that his words were a bit abrupt. "I'm sorry, I apologize to you. I was impulsive. It's just that Senior Yi Wuxiang was the Millennium Sword. It is a pity that his sword intent was not shown through the statue. If it's possible, maybe someone will really be able to comprehend something from it." Su Zhongliang looked seriously at Long Haochen and thought that this young man did not seem to be faking it. He sighed and said, "It is too difficult to display General Ye's sword intent through the statue. Even back then, none of Marshal Ye's direct descendants could truly imitate Marshal Ye's sword intent, let alone now." "Marshal Yi?" Long Haochen asked curiously. Su Zhongliang said, "Marshal Yi was not only the hall master of our warrior temple, he was also the commander-in-chief of the southeastern fortress. The seniors all called him by that name." Long Haochen nodded silently and said, "Hall Master Su, when can I meet the Hall Master of your temple?" Su Zhongliang was stunned for a moment. He thought that this kid really wants to meet the Hall Master. He seems to think too highly of himself. Long Haochen naturally saw through the doubts in his mind and earnestly said, "Hall Master Su, I have come to the warrior temple this time for 3 matters. I can ask for your help on 2 of them, but the most important matter is that I must meet with the temple master." Su Zhongliang frowned and said, "I'm afraid that's a bit difficult. The hall master is very busy." Long Haochen faced the statue and said indifferently, "What if it's about Senior Yi Wuxiang?" "Huh?" Su Zhongliang was shocked. "About Marshal Yi? Leader Long, can you tell me what it is first?" Long Haochen did not hesitate. He nodded and said, "I think I should be able to do the suggestion I just made. I can let this statue have Marshal Ye's sword intent." Su Zhongliang sucked in a breath of cold air. No matter how much he didn't believe it, he didn't open his mouth to question Long Haochen, because he was very clear that even if an Emperor-grade Demon Hunt squad captain was here, he wouldn't make such a joke with the Warrior Temple. If it really was just a joke, then the damage to the Warrior Temple would be too great. No one could bear the consequences. "Leader Long, Su Zhongliang didn't know how to express his current emotions. Of course, he hoped that it was true. However, this Leader Long was too young. Long Haochen raised his right hand and said sincerely, "I just came from the Holy City with my teammates. I wonder if the Warrior Temple has received any news about the awakening of Senior Ye's godly sword in the Holy City a few months ago?" Su Zhongliang could clearly feel his heartbeat speeding up. Of course they had heard about this. The Warrior Temple had also sent a deputy temple master to investigate this matter personally. However, when they found Marshal Ye's descendant, Yi Weiyang, Yi Weiyang refused to reveal who had obtained Marshal Ye's heavy sword. He only said that if that person was willing, he would naturally contact the warrior temple. Moreover, the godly sword had already recognized that person as its master. Because that person was a knight, it was impossible for him to return to the warrior temple. This matter shocked the higher-ups of the warrior temple. However, as Yi Weiyang was the descendant of Marshal Yi, they couldn't force him. They could only secretly look for the knight who had inherited Yi Wushang's godly sword, Arya of the Goddess of Light. They even asked the Knights Templars to cooperate with them. However, after a few months, that person still hadn't shown up. At this moment, hearing Long Haochen mention this matter, Su Zhongyang's shock could be imagined. However, what shocked him even more had yet to come. Su Zhongliang saw Long Haochen's right hand, a right hand that was completely golden. A gentle golden light quietly rose. Then, an awe-inspiring sword intent suddenly bloomed. The huge golden sword was already raised high above his head. The spiritual pearl at the tip of the sword emitted a bright golden light. The sword intent was not only emitted from this godly sword, but also from Long Haochen's body. The impact on Su Zhongliang at this moment was too great. Just by standing there, what Long Haochen gave him was a kind of unparalleled unity between man and sword. It should be known that as the Deputy Hall Master of the Battle Hall, Su Zhongliang's internal spiritual energy cultivation exceeded 90,000. He was a powerhouse at the peak of the 8th rank. However, at this moment, facing Long Haochen, he actually felt very small. Not only him, but everyone who was passing through the hall of the warrior temple also stopped because of this sudden golden light. Of course, they wouldn't have any hostility. That was light attribute, so it couldn't be an enemy. However, the monstrous sword intent that followed made everyone sluggish. At this moment, they even had an illusion that the figure blooming with golden light was the real statue of General Yi, while the tall figure on the other side was just a dead object. The contrast was too strong. The tyrannical sword intent seemed to pierce through the dome of the warrior temple, and the figure who was one with the sword was even more tall. After nearly a year of closed-door training, Long Haochen's harvest could be imagined. What he inherited was not only the godly sword, Arya of the Goddess of Light, but also its sword intent. At the same time, he also integrated this sword intent with his understanding of the sword that repelled a bow when he was awakened as a god-favored. It formed his own unique sword intent. There is no doubt that this was the help brought to him by his powerful talent as a god-favored. To be precise, the sword intent that Long Haochen displayed at this moment was somewhat different from that of Yi Wushang back then, and it was far from comparable to Yi Wushang's understanding of the sword. However, he held the Arya of the Goddess of Light in his hand, and with the help of sword intent, how could the entire warrior temple not be shocked? Su Zhongliang was the first to salute the Arya of the Goddess of Light with the highest warrior etiquette. Then, all the warriors present bowed respectfully in unison. The golden light converged, and the Arya of the Goddess of Light disappeared from Long Haochen's hand, along with the tyrannical sword intent. Looking at Long Haochen's burning gaze, Su Zhongliang nodded vigorously. "Commander Long, please wait for a moment. I will report to the temple lord immediately." After he finished speaking, he immediately turned around and left. Long Haochen was still standing in the same place, silently looking at the statue in front of him. Although this statue didn't have the sword intent of the sword god of light Yi Wushang, the tragic aura of his disdainfully sweeping across the battlefield deeply touched Long Haochen's heart. Vaguely, he had a different understanding of his own sword intent. This trip to the warrior temple was obviously not because of the military chief of Xingxuan City. That was just a small matter that came along the way. The more important reason for his trip was to return Yi Wushang's sword intent to the warrior temple. This was also the reason why he insisted on meeting the warrior temple lord. Not long after, more than 10 people came down from the staircase on the side of the hall. The one walking at the front was an old man in a golden robe. This old man already had a head full of silver hair, but when he walked, he gave off a strong, oppressive force, as if a mountain was crashing down on people. Su Zhongliang and some other high-ranking members of the warrior temple lord followed behind this old man and went straight to Long Haochen. The old man in the golden robe was full of excitement, and he strode to Long Haochen's side. However, Long Haochen did not seem to see him, and was still staring at the statue of the Millennium Sword. Su Zhongliang was about to speak, but he was stopped by the old man in the golden robe. A strange light flashed in the old man's eyes, and he turned around to signal everyone to be quiet so that they would not disturb Long Haochen. He stood by Long Haochen's side, sizing up the handsome young man. After almost an hour, Long Haochen's eyes suddenly lit up, and he took a step forward with his left foot. He swung his right hand forward at lightning speed, and a faint golden light flashed. He let out a long sigh that was full of pleasure, and in the next moment, the entire hall was suddenly filled with a sharp howl. The howl disappeared in an instant, but the high-ranking members of the warrior temple lord who were standing at the side were all shocked. They could clearly feel the ferocity of Long Haochen's right hand when he swung it out. There was no fluctuation of spiritual power, just pure sword will. Who was this young man? Your Long Haochen? The old man in the golden robe finally spoke, and his voice was trembling. Long Haochen was shocked, and only then did he realize that he was surrounded by people. He quickly turned around and happened to meet the old man in the golden robe's emotional gaze. "Senior, you are," Su Zhongliang hurriedly said. "This is the master of our warrior temple, Master Qiu Yonghao." Long Haochen stomped his left foot on the ground, and his right fist knocked on his chest. "Commander-level monster Hunt 64 Commander, Long Haochen greets you, Master." Qiu Yonghao had been looking at him for a full hour. "You must be Brother Xingyu's son. You're indeed a young hero. I didn't expect General Ye's sword to recognize you as its master. Can you let us see General Ye's aria of the Goddess of Light first?" He really couldn't wait. "Okay." Long Haochen raised his right hand again, and when the brilliant golden light appeared in front of all the leaders of the warrior temple lord again, they were all stunned, especially the older powerhouses of the warrior temple lord, who couldn't help but cry. Among them, the one who was the most emotional was the master of the warrior temple, Qiu Yonghao. Big brother, I finally see your sword again. I finally see it shine again. Big brother, why didn't you listen to me back then? You became a hero of humanity, a hero of the warrior temple. But do you know? I lost you, my good brother, forever." Qiu Yonghao took a step forward and actually held the aria of the Goddess of Light tightly with both hands and cried bitterly. All the powerhouses of the warrior temple lord once again, thinking of the sword in Long Haochen's hand, and gave the highest warrior salute. Feeling their sorrow and nostalgia, Long Haochen's eyes couldn't help but gradually turn red. What was even more shocking was that the aria of the Goddess of Light in his hand seemed to understand Qiu Yonghao's words and actually made a slight buzzing sound, as if the sword was also crying. After a long time, Qiu Yonghao gradually recovered from his sorrow. Wiping away the snot and tears on his face, this white-haired old man looked at Long Haochen with red and swollen eyes. "Child, did you specially bring General Ye's sword back? I thank you on behalf of the warrior temple." Long Haochen nodded lightly and said, "Temple Lord, please restrain your grief. It was only by coincidence that I was able to let the divine sword shine once more, but it is far too precious to the warrior temple. Therefore, although I obtained the sword's recognition as its master, I must obtain the permission of you and the seniors of the warrior temple lord before I can use it as my weapon. I promise you and everyone here that I will not let Senior Ye's sword be covered in dust in my hands." Qiu Yonghao slightly paused. Although he was very emotional, there was still a hidden meaning in his words just now. He said that Long Haochen would return the sword and not to show it. This meant that he wanted to take back the aria of the Goddess of Light. But Long Haochen didn't respond, and instead firmly expressed his attitude towards the sword, as well as the fact that it had recognized him as its master. "Long Haochen, then why did you come today?" Qiu Yonghao asked lightly. Long Haochen said respectfully, "I came today for 3 matters, the most important one of which requires the consent of you and the warrior temple. Although I can't keep the sword, I hope to be able to leave Senior Ye's sword intent in the Warrior Temple Lord, because it should belong to the Warrior Temple Lord. Chiu Yonghao was slightly stunned. Leave Senior Ye's sword intent? What do you want to do? He was getting more and more curious about this young man. Of course, deep in his heart, he naturally hoped to be able to keep the aria of the Goddess of Light. However, he was very clear about Long Haochen's position in the Knights Templars. Han Qiu had said that this kid was the only heir of the Knights Templars, and also the future Temple Lord of the Knights Templars. It was impossible to force him to leave the sword. Not to mention, his father was not easy to deal with. Long Haochen looked at the statue of Yu Wushang and said in a deep voice, "Temple Lord, if you agree, I hope to leave my suggestion on this statue, so that in the future, every powerhouse in the Warrior Temple Lord can see it and even learn something from it. This is also the only thing I can do for the Warrior Temple Lord." If Long Haochen said this as soon as they met, Chiu Yonghao would definitely have a bad opinion of this young man. These words were too arrogant. Back then, there were so many powerhouses in the Warrior Temple Lord, but none of them were able to carve out Senior Ye's sword intent. Although Chiu Yonghao didn't know the exact age of Long Haochen, he could vaguely guess that he was definitely less than 20 years old. However, just now, the sword intent that Long Haochen slashed out with his right hand had greatly shocked Chiu Yonghao. He was completely sure that even if it was Senior Yi, at his age, it was impossible for him to have such attainments in swordsmanship. This young man was indeed blessed by the heavens. After pondering for a moment, Chiu Yonghao slowly turned around, faced the group of Warrior Temple Lord, and said in a deep voice, "What do you think?" An old man who looked to be about the same age as Chiu Yonghao said in a deep voice, "This is not appropriate. Senior Ye's statue has been standing for hundreds of years. How can it be touched so easily? This is not something we could decide. If the statue is damaged, we won't be able to answer to the millions of warriors in the Temple Lord." Su Zhongliang said, "Temple Lord, Deputy Temple Lord, I think we should let him try." Long Haochen was able to inherit Senior Ye's divine sword. This in itself shows that the divine sword has acknowledged him, and only he can have some understanding of Senior Ye's sword intent. No. The old man who was addressed as Deputy Temple Lord said resolutely, "What if he fails? Can we afford this kind of loss? We must first consider the worst consequences before doing anything. Only when we can bear the worst outcome can we take action." There is no doubt that this old man could be considered as a conservative in the Warrior Temple Lord. Next, the group of experts in the Warrior Temple Lord expressed their opinions. Most of them did not want to let Long Haochen modify Yi Wushang's statue. Of course, it was not that they did not want Senior Ye's sword intent to reappear. It was just that Long Haochen was really too young. In their eyes, this successor of Senior Ye's divine sword was still just a child. How could they feel at ease leaving such an important matter to a child? Looking at everyone's argument, Long Haochen secretly sighed in his heart and said to Chiu Yonghao, "Temple Lord, how about this? I won't directly make a move on Senior Ye's statue. Please find me a big rock. I will try to leave Senior Ye's sword intent on this big rock. However, I can only make a move once, because we are about to leave the Alliance and enter the territory of the demons to carry out our mission." He had to do this. The fundamental purpose of Long Haochen coming here was to obtain the Warrior Temple Lord's recognition of him possessing the aria of the Goddess of Light. At the same time, he also wanted to repay the Warrior Temple. After all, if he did not give an explanation to the Warrior Temple Lord, there would definitely be a lot of trouble in the future. He wanted to leave the sword intent in the Warrior Temple Lord to prove that he was qualified to control this divine sword. Chiu Yonghao nodded and said, "In that case, we can only do so. However, Long Haochen, I have a presumptuous request. You also know that the aria of the Goddess of Light is too important to the Warrior Temple Lord. If possible, we still hope that the divine sword can stay in the Warrior Temple Lord. You can ask for any conditions. As long as it is within our ability, we will definitely satisfy you." Chiu Yonghao could also see that if he did not say it directly, Long Haochen would definitely not leave the divine sword behind. However, this was not surprising. If it was anyone else, they would probably do the same. After all, this was a powerful divine sword. Although Qiu Yonghao could see that the divine sword in Long Haochen's hands could not fully restore its former glory, it was still a powerful legendary weapon. It would not be easy for anyone who had such a divine sword to take it out. Long Haochen looked at Qiu Yonghao, but shook his head and said, "Temple Lord, I can't. The aria of the Goddess of Light has recognized me as its master, and only I can use it. I think that Senior Knight also does not want to see the divine sword stay in the dark room. I will take it with me to run amok among the demons and kill strong enemies. Only by drinking the blood of the demons can this divine sword truly regain its light and recondense its sword soul. So, I can only refuse you." Qiu Yonghao said in a deep voice, "What if I use an epic equipment to exchange with you? It is also of the light attribute." Long Haochen's heart trembled. Of course, he knew what an epic equipment meant. It should be known that in the current era, people who possessed an epic equipment were as rare as phoenix feathers and Qilin horns. The reason why the Knights Templars had always been the leader of the six great temples was because the Knights Templars possessed a godly weapon, the Throne of God. However, the Warrior Temple did not have a single godly weapon. Epic equipment was already the strongest weapon the Warrior Temple could offer. According to Long Haochen's knowledge, the Warrior Temple did not have more than 5 pieces of epic equipment. Without a doubt, any piece of epic equipment could increase his strength to a whole new level. This was undoubtedly a huge temptation. However, Long Haochen still shook his head. "I'm sorry, Temple Lord. To me, this divine sword is even more important than a godly weapon. Using it in battle will allow me to experience Senior Knight's glory in the past. Whether it is the improvement of my strength or the tempering of my willpower, it is extraordinary. Moreover, as I said earlier, with this divine sword, I will make it shine as brightly as it did in the past." "Young man, you are too arrogant." The elderly deputy temple lord took 2 steps forward and arrived beside Qiu Yonghao. An enormous pressure enveloped Long Haochen like a mountain. Everyone present was a powerhouse from the warrior temple. Although they could not actually attack Long Haochen, they could still put some pressure on him. Facing the sudden pressure, Long Haochen's expression remained unchanged. He straightened his back and said respectfully, "This junior does not feel that I am arrogant. I am merely stating a fact. Otherwise, I would not have appeared in the warrior temple. If I had only used the aria of the Goddess of Light in battle against the demons, I am afraid that the warrior temple would not have discovered that I am the owner of this divine sword. Today, I have come with absolute sincerity." Qiu Yonghao waved his hand, blocking the pressure released by the old man. He was inwardly shocked. It must be known that even if Long Haochen really relied on his own cultivation to become the captain of a commander-grade demon hunt squad, he would only be at the 6th step. Facing the powerful pressure of a 9th-step powerhouse, he was still able to speak with confidence and composure. This was not something an ordinary person could do. "Haochen, how about this? You said earlier that you were willing to accept the test of our warrior temple. Since we are of the same family, we will naturally not send anyone to spar with you. According to what you said, if you can leave behind the Knight Marshal's sword and 10 on a rock, it will prove that you have the right to use this divine sword. Otherwise, you can leave the divine sword behind, and we will still be willing to give you an epic-grade equipment. If it was any other equipment, Qiu Yonghao would definitely not be like this." This was already somewhat of a bully. However, the aria of the Goddess of Light was too important to the warrior temple. Even if it was left behind, and no one could use it, it would still be good. Long Haochen looked at Qiu Yonghao's burning gaze and took a deep breath. "All right, I promise you. However, if I can't do it, I will leave the divine sword behind, but I don't want an epic-grade equipment from your warrior temple. Please bring the rock over." He could understand the anxiety of these experts from the warrior temple. However, under the pressure of the crowd, Long Haochen's pride had been ignited. "I will prove to you that I have the right to wield the divine sword." Qiu Yonghao's eyes revealed an apologetic look, as he turned around and gave a few orders. Naturally, someone went to carry it out. The elderly deputy temple master also left in a hurry. Long Haochen did not continue the conversation with Qiu Yonghao. Instead, he sat down cross-legged and entered a meditative state under the watchful eyes of so many people. The entire process was as natural as water flowing when the conditions were right. Almost as soon as he sat down, he was like an old monk in meditation or like a solid rock. This kid's future was bound to be extraordinary. Qiu Yonghao could not help but admire him again, and was even a little jealous of the Knights Templars. To have such achievements at such a young age, this Long Haochen would definitely be a mainstay of the Knights Templars in the future. If his development went smoothly, then the Knights Templars would have another amazing genius. He might even surpass his father. Long Xingwu became a Knight of the Seal in his 40s. What about him? How old would he be when he fused with the throne of God? 40 years old? Or less than 40 years old? Not long after, more than 10 experts from the warrior temple carried a giant rock into the hall. Seeing this giant rock, Qiu Yonghao's expression changed, and he gave the deputy temple master a questioning look. The deputy temple master nodded at him seriously, and his lips moved as if he was saying something. Qiu Yonghao hesitated for a moment, but finally nodded. When he looked at Long Haochen, who was in a meditative state again, the apologetic look in his eyes deepened. This giant rock was oval in shape, and it was slightly bigger at the bottom. It was completely black, but it emitted a special aura. It was calm and deep. It did not look like a rock, but more like a deep cave. It had a history. It was a meteorite that the warrior temple had obtained from outer space. It was extremely hard. Even a Radiance-grade equipment would have a hard time leaving a mark on it. A legendary-grade equipment would also need to inject a large amount of spiritual energy to cut it. Moreover, this meteorite's spiritual energy conductivity was comparable to that of adamantine, and its hardness was far beyond that of adamantine. It was just that no master alchemist had the confidence to forge it into a piece of equipment, so it had always been kept in the warrior temple's treasury. Today, they actually took this meteorite out. Their goal was undoubtedly to make things difficult for Long Haochen. Even if he had the ability to leave behind sore intent, he would need to have the cultivation to cut this meteorite. That was not something that could be done with just a little bit of spiritual energy. As if sensing that the giant rock was in place, Long Haochen slowly opened his eyes. His gaze fell directly on the 3-meter-tall meteorite, and a trace of surprise appeared in his eyes. Qiu Yonghao coughed and said, "Since we want to leave behind Marshal Ye's sword intent, of course we want it to be passed down through the ages. That's why we took out the best material. Long Haochen, do you think this meteorite will do? If it doesn't work, we'll switch to another one." He was really a little embarrassed. He had lived for more than 100 years, but he had to scheme against a teenager. If the higher-ups of the Knights Templars found out about this, he would really be too ashamed to face anyone. Therefore, he settled for the next best thing, which was to ask Long Haochen if he was willing to change the rock. However, to Qiu Yonghao's surprise, Long Haochen shook his head and said, "There's no need to change it. I'll take this one. However, I have a small request. Since we're using this meteorite to carve, can you give me the scrap that I cut off?" "Sure. However, that's under the condition that you're able to leave behind the sword intent." The elderly deputy spoke first, as if he was afraid that Long Haochen would go back on his word. However, they did not know that it was not Long Haochen's first time seeing this meteorite. His father, Long Xingwu, also had a piece of it. Therefore, he knew very well how hard the meteorite was. Back then, Long Xingwu had told Long Haochen that there was a treasure in the warrior temple, which was this meteorite. If it could be refined or integrated into a piece of equipment, even if it was just a small piece, it could improve the quality of the equipment. The effect was even more obvious when it was used on a weapon. Long Haochen stood up slowly and walked toward the meteorite. He had never carved anything before, and he had no knowledge about carving at all. However, what he wanted to do today was not to carve any form, but to leave behind the sword intent. That was a completely different concept. Long Haochen only stopped when he was 5 meters away from the meteorite. He stood there and stared at the meteorite that was emitting a profound aura. Nobody interrupted him, and they just watched in silence. Xiao Yonghao's emotions were very complicated. He did not even know if he should hope for Long Haochen to succeed or fail. However, whether he succeeded or failed, it would not be a bad thing for the warrior temple. "I need the help of a mount and a spiritual stove," Long Haochen said calmly. He did not even turn around. Xiao Yonghao said, "Of course." Long Haochen nodded and pointed his left hand to his side. Suddenly, a purple light flashed, and a huge creature appeared in everyone's sight. Hao Yue's shock was quite strong. Its 10-meter-long body was like a small hill, and what was more peculiar were its 4 big heads with different horns. After appearing next to Long Haochen, it suddenly looked very imposing. With their necks straightened, Little Light, Little Fire, Little Green, and Little Blue looked at the people in the warrior temple at the same time, with a kind of arrogance. "What kind of mount is this?" Xiao Yonghao and the deputy temple master next to him looked at each other in shock. They had never seen such a magical beast before. Although the spiritual energy waves emitted by this magical beast were not very strong to them, it seemed to have a special quality. Even if it looked arrogant, it still gave people a feeling that it was only natural. At this moment, a low chanting sound began to come from Hao Yue's 4 big heads, and they made a very strange posture. Only Little Light's neck was straight, while the other 3 heads were crouching down, attached to Little Light's neck, and looked up at Little Light as they continued chanting. Immediately, the 4 elements of wind, fire, water, and light fluctuated violently from Hao Yue's body. A magical beast of 4 elements. Su Zhongliang could not help but exclaim in a low voice. Xiao Yonghao's gaze immediately became even more serious. He suddenly felt a little regretful. He regretted making things difficult for this child. Long Haochen wasn't wrong. If he hadn't come today, the warrior temple wouldn't even have been able to see the aria of the goddess of light. This child had come with good intentions, yet he was treated like this by them. However, on the other side was the aria of the goddess of light. For the first time, Xiao Yonghao felt that he was in such a difficult position. At this moment, Long Haochen moved. Brilliant golden light suddenly shone from his back, and 4 spiritual wings spread out at the same time, valiantly absorbing the light elements in the air. At the same time, Long Haochen raised his right hand, and the aria of the goddess of light appeared in his grasp again. An even more bizarre scene was yet to come. A golden figure seemed to have stepped out from Long Haochen's body, and when he spread his 4 wings, the golden figure also appeared in everyone's sight. A golden battle dress, a golden staff, beautiful golden hair, and 6 transparent golden wings. More importantly, she actually had the same substance and height as a human, and only a pair of pointy little ears revealed her origins. Ancient elves? The elderly deputy temple master could not help but exclaim. For decades, he had been the authority in researching ancient elves in the warrior temple. However, he had never seen what real ancient elves looked like. When Yu Ting appeared in front of everyone, everything was exactly the same as the ancient elves in his imagination. How could he not be surprised? No, this is an elemental elf. Xiao Yonghao was the deputy temple master of the warrior temple after all, and his perception was also the strongest. However, after refuting his old friend's words, he was also shocked. Although he could feel that this was an elemental elf, who had ever seen an elemental elf that looked like an ancient elf? Long Haochen, how much more shock do you want to bring us before you are willing to give up? This time, not only did Xiao Yonghao regret, but even the deputy temple master, who had always been very tough, felt a little remorseful. Chapter 131. Yu Ting naturally did not care what others thought of her. Just like Hao Yue, she immediately started chanting the incantation the moment she appeared. A thick golden light instantly spread out from her body, and then surged towards Long Haochen. Long Haochen raised his head and gazed at the aria of the goddess of light in his hands. He did not chant any incantation himself, and his entire mind was completely focused on this divine sword. The huge sword light that the aura of the goddess of light emitted gradually retracted under his gaze, converging into the blade. But, with every retraction, the aura of the goddess of light would become a little more solid, and its color would change from brilliant gold to dark gold. Long Houchen's eyes were like lightning. At this moment, he seemed to have completely fused with this divine sword. It was as if the aura of the goddess of light was only the sharpness of the entire body, and he himself was the blade. The tyrannical sword intent continued to rise, and the gold color on Long Houchen's body also began to become more and more intense. At this moment, it was as if he had returned to that little hill in the illusory paradise. It was not just enlightenment, but also a kind of arrogance. Even if he was facing a rank 9 powerhouse now, he would not cower in the slightest. Hao Yue and Yiting's spiritual energy continued to pour into Long Houchen, and Hao Yue was using the light attribute spirit-increasing technique that he was proficient in. But this time, it was not just Light who was using it, but the other 3 heads had all converted their own attributes to the light attribute and used all their strength to support Long Houchen. Yiting was using the simplest dazzling heaven and earth magic, but her dazzling heaven and earth increased Long Houchen's spiritual energy by more than 3 times as much as ordinary dazzling heaven and earth. And this light attribute spiritual energy had all been purified by her. It was not an exaggeration to say that, apart from being unable to increase the total amount of spiritual energy in his body, Long Houchen's continuous battle strength was at least equivalent to a powerhouse with a spiritual energy of 20,000. Yiting and Hao Yue's ability to support him could only be described as terrifying. Finally, the aura of the goddess of light turned completely dark gold in Long Houchen's hands. Even his body became the same color. This feeling wasn't strange, but it was incomparably powerful. The towering sword could be felt even outside the warrior temple. It was as if this sword could split the heavens and earth apart. At this moment, Long Houchen made his move. He stepped forward with his left foot and slashed out with his heavy sword. Simple, direct, and without any flourishes. Saint Hua Azura slash. Although Long Houchen didn't use the ready skill, when he slashed out with his sword, the sword intent that had already condensed into a solid substance drained all of his spiritual power. There was no sound, and there was no leakage of spiritual power. Everyone only saw a flash of dark golden light. The sharp sword even caused a large number of decorations in the warrior temple to crack. The powerhouses in the warrior temple had to activate their own spiritual power to protect themselves. They had to protect themselves just by sensing the presence of the sword intent. What if they were to face this sword for real? Qiu Yonghao's expression really changed this time, because he realized that if he was the one facing this sword, even if he could kill Long Houchen, he wouldn't be able to escape unscathed. This child cultivation was not even at the Type 7 realm, while Qiu Yonghao was an experienced Type 9 powerhouse. However, to everyone's surprise, the meteorite from outer space was still standing there motionlessly. Long Houchen, who had slashed out with the sword, collapsed to the ground as though he was exhausted. It was Yiting who hugged him from behind that he didn't fall. Gentle golden light continuously blossomed from Yiting's body and fused into Long Houchen's body. Hao Yue's 4 large heads also slowly lifted up, and his 4 heads and 8 eyes all turned purple. The 9 purple light patterns on Long Houchen's forehead appeared again. However, after the awakening of the God-favored's constitution, his light patterns had turned purplish gold. Long Houchen's body trembled slightly, and he slowly stood up. The aura of the goddess of light had already turned golden and entered his right hand. After slashing out with the sword just now, he actually fell into a temporary state of unconsciousness. It was Hao Yue and Yiting's continuous treatment that allowed him to recover. However, it was all worth it. The sword just now had clearly allowed Long Houchen to comprehend the sword intent that he had comprehended from looking at Yi Wushang's statue. It was no exaggeration to say that his understanding of the sword intent had reached an extremely deep level. It was at least equivalent to Yi Wushang when he was 30 years old. None of the powerhouses in the warrior temple spoke, because they didn't know what to say. Although it seemed like Long Houchin had failed, the terrifying sword intent just now was too powerful. The ones who felt it the most were Qiu Yonghao and the deputy temple master, who had personally witnessed Yi Wuxiang's battle. At that moment, they seemed to think that Yi Wuxiang had been resurrected. Based on the sword intent alone, they understood that Long Houchin was indeed qualified to use the aria of the Goddess of Light. There wasn't a single person like him in the entire warrior temple. Long Houchin. Qiu Yonghao took a few steps forward, wanting to comfort this child. He was even thinking whether he could convince the higher-ups of the warrior temple to let this child become the owner of this divine sword. Long Houchin turned his head back weakly and forced a smile at Qiu Yonghao. He was so weak that he couldn't even speak. If it weren't for Hao Yue and Yuting, he might even have fallen into a deep coma. That move just now had consumed too much of his energy. Not only did it drain his spiritual energy, but it also drained all of his energy and stamina. He was so weak that he couldn't even lift a finger. Of course, this situation was getting better. Hao Yue and Yuting cooperated very well. A layer of faint purple light kept spreading from Hao Yue's body. As the purple light poured into Long Houchin's body, his stamina was recovering bit by bit, and Yuting was providing him with the purest light element. Qiu Yonghao sighed and said, "Child, I have a suggestion. Although you have failed, you have done very well. I understand that. At least for now, you are the only one who can control this divine sword. The aria of the Goddess of Light has also chosen a very good owner. You are the son of Long Xingwu and the successor of the Knights Templars. I shouldn't say this, but you should know that the aria of the Goddess of Light is very important to the warrior temple. I can't offer anything more precious than my own position. If you are willing, then from this moment on, you will be the temple master of the warrior temple. I will be the deputy temple master and assist you with all my strength. You also don't need to carry out your monster hunter's mission anymore. As the temple master of the warrior temple, your training and everything else will be supported by all the resources of the warrior temple. I also believe that in the near future, you will be the second knight marshal." When he said this, Qiu Yonghao was very excited. It wasn't difficult for him to make this decision. It could even be said that it was done in an instant. He didn't discuss it with anyone. He believed that he had the ability to convince the other people in the warrior temple. His words were not the least bit flattering, but completely from the bottom of his heart. Long Houchin was really too outstanding. As a Type 9 powerhouse, Qiu Yonghao could clearly see that whether it was his mount or his light elemental sprite, they were all extraordinary. Not to mention the two pairs of spiritual wings on his body, which revealed his unlimited strength in the future. Perhaps Long Houchin's current cultivation base was only at the Type 6 level, but Qiu Yonghao was completely sure that even a Type 7 powerhouse might not be able to contend against him. When a young powerhouse like Long Houchin appeared in front of him, he couldn't suppress the love in his heart. However, Long Houchin already had too many unique things. What could he give him? What could attract him enough to leave the Knights Templars and become a member of the Warrior Temple, and at the same time, leave the aria of the Goddess of Light in the Warrior Temple forever? In such a short period of time, the only thing he could think of was his own position as the Warrior Temple's Temple Master. The Temple League was formed by 6 major temples. To be able to become a Temple Master of one of them, that was equivalent to being one of the 6 powerhouses of the entire Temple League. This position and honor was already the pinnacle of what a human could achieve. Only those legend rankers of the monster hunters could compare to him. The moment these words came out, everyone was shocked. Almost every powerhouse from the Warrior Temple let out gasps of shock. They never imagined that the Temple Master would actually say such words. Furthermore, with Qiu Yonghao's position, since he had said these words, he would definitely not take them back. Even the Alliance could not stop him. Of course, whether Long Houchin could truly become the Temple Master of the Warrior Temple would still depend on the decision of the upper echelons of the temple. However, Qiu Yonghao's position in the Warrior Temple was extremely high. With his promise, Long Houchin was practically sitting on the throne of the Warrior Temple. "Senior," Long Houchin said weakly, Xiao Yonghao said seriously, I will never change my words, nor will I regret them. As long as you are willing to take the position of the Warrior Temple's Temple Master, it will be the beginning of a glorious era for the Warrior Temple. Although you are still young, in the future, you will definitely be the pride of the Warrior Temple. You might even surpass Marshal Yi. Come, child. The doors of the Warrior Temple are all open to you. From now on, you can make the decisions in the Warrior Temple. Xiao Yonghao's words were undoubtedly full of temptation. It could be said that in the 6,000 years since the establishment of the Temple League, this was the first time such a situation had happened. Moreover, Xiao Yonghao still did not know Long Haochen's true age. For a 16-year-old youth to be given the important position of the Warrior Temple's Temple Master, this was simply unheard of. At this time, the emotions of the upper echelons of the Warrior Temple had gradually calmed down. Moreover, everyone's eyes began to reveal a peculiar expression. Xiao Yonghao's words were directed at Long Haochen, but how could it not be directed at them? They had witnessed everything that Long Haochen had shown just now. If this youth could really become the Warrior Temple's Temple Master, then after 10 or 20 years, he would surely bring a bright future to the Warrior Temple. The Warrior Temple's Deputy Temple Master, who had been very domineering before, strode to Xiao Yonghao's side. Just when Xiao Yonghao thought that his old friend was going to object to his decision, the old man said resolutely, I agree with Brother Qiu's decision, child. As long as you are willing, you will be the most powerful person in the Warrior Temple from now on. If Xiao Yonghao's promise had at least allowed Long Haochen to sit on half of the Warrior Temple's throne, then the words of the experienced Deputy Temple Master had confirmed everything. As long as Long Haochen agreed, then he would really, seniors, I'm really sorry. I can't. I'm a member of the Knights Templars. Moreover, I'm now a demon hunter and also the leader of a team of monster hunters. I have to be responsible for my companions. Moreover, I didn't fail. While the two Temple Masters and the Deputy Temple Master were talking, Long Haochen's strength had finally recovered a little. At least he had the strength to speak. He actually rejected it? The two old men were a little stunned. Also, what did he say? He didn't fail? Long Haochen gave Hao Yue a look. Then, Hao Yue's huge body slightly tilted. He lifted his tail and gently swept it towards the meteorite. With a loud bang, at least 1/3 of the meteorite fell to the ground. It was really heavy. A loud bang was heard when it hit the ground. But at the same time, it shocked everyone present. Everyone was very clear about how tough the meteorite was. Not to mention cutting a whole piece, even cutting off a small piece, was incomparably difficult. So he did not fail. Instead, he cut off such a big piece of the meteorite. However, including all the Type 9 powerhouses present, no one saw Long Haochen's sword clearly. It was as though when the sword slashed out, even the light was swallowed. Xiao Yonghao only felt his throat was a little dry. At this time, he actually did not know what to say. He had nothing to say, and the powerhouses of the Warrior Temple present also had nothing to say. At this moment, even Xiao Yonghao's mind was blank. Using this short period of time, Long Haochen's physical strength recovered a little. He stood up and slowly walked to the meteorite with the help of Yiting. The golden light shone, and the light of the eternal melody enveloped the meteorite. 1/3 of the meteorite disappeared in an instant. This was what they had agreed before. Because of the Warrior Temple's attitude, Long Haochen directly cut off 1/3 of the meteorite. This naturally became his reward this time. But did the Warrior Temple really lose? The answer was no. Yiting pointed the staff in her hand at the remaining 2/3 of the meteorite. A golden light flashed, and the meteorite seemed to let out a slight buzz. Then a majestic sword will bloomed from the smooth, mirror-like surface. The fierce sword will rushed up to the sky and slowly fell back. The powerful sword will finally gathered within a 3-meter radius of the meteorite and slowly bloomed outwards. It was not as fierce as before, but this sword will was more solid. Yes, Long Haochen's sword left all his sword will in this meteorite. Otherwise, he would not have become so weak. Of course, his own sword will not disappear. He only needed his body to recover. And this meteorite would not disappear for at least 100 years. Stimulated by Ye Ting's spiritual power, the sword was released. This was the most precious thing that Long Haochen left for the warrior temple. Every warrior present was speechless. Qiu Yonghao slowly came to Long Haochen's side and sighed. He said, "Child, come with me." As he spoke, he slowly walked to the side of the hall's stairs. He walked very slowly. At this moment, he seemed to have aged a little. Under the gaze of the other powerhouses in the warrior temple, Long Haochen followed Qiu Yonghao up the stairs. At this time, Long Haochen's physical strength had recovered a lot. Before going up the stairs, he first sent Hao Yue back to the Tower of Eternity and then followed Qiu Yonghao upstairs. On the top floor of the warrior temple, in the temple master's office, Qiu Yonghao pointed to the sofa and said, "Sit." Long Haochen looked around the room of the highest leader of the warrior temple and was shocked, because this place was too simple. There were no decorations in the room. There was a simple table, chair, wooden bookcase, an old sofa, and a wooden bed. That was all. Although this room was 200 square meters, it gave people a very spacious feeling. Qiu Yonghao said indifferently, "When General Yi led the warrior temple, this room was arranged like this. It's still the same, even after 100 years. Even the position hasn't been changed." When he first met this warrior temple lord, Long Haochen could feel his fanatical faith in Yi Wuxiang. Are you wondering why I miss General Yi so much as the lord of the warrior temple? Qiu Yonghao looked at Long Haochen in disappointment. Long Haochen didn't say anything. He just nodded his head lightly. "Because I was General Ye's attendant, or rather, General Ye's servant, a companion who grew up with General Yi." Qiu Yonghao's voice was even a little choked. The appearance of the aria of the goddess of light had evoked the most painful, but also the most beautiful memory in his heart. General Ye's family was very well off. His father was a magistrate. My family was poor. When I was 5 years old, I was bought by my parents to General Ye's house and sold as a slave. I'm 2 years younger than Marshal Yi, so the residents let me follow him as his manservant and also as his attendant for life. General Yi treated me very well. He never treated me as a servant since I was young. I still remember clearly that when I was only 7 years old, he said to me, "You're my younger brother from now on. I'll protect you." At this point, Qiu Yonghao couldn't control his inner feelings anymore. Tears flowed down his face. This old man, who was already more than 100 years old, was actually crying over the memory of more than 100 years ago. If Long Haochen was more or less dissatisfied with the warrior temple before, he revealed his true feelings after Qiu Yonghao proposed to let him inherit the position of the temple lord. The trace of dissatisfaction also turned into sympathy. General Yi practiced swordsmanship with me. General Yi joined the warrior temple and asked me to join the warrior temple with him. Even on the eve of the battle with the demon emperor, he didn't forget to tell me to train well. At that time, I was only at the 7th rank. If it wasn't for General Yi, I wouldn't be here today. I would only be a servant, living a mediocre life. I really didn't expect to see General Ye's sword shine again today. I know that it's impossible for you to return the sword to the warrior temple. You're right. Only in your hands will this divine sword be able to display the splendor of General Yi of the past. However, I hope that you won't be as impulsive as General Yi. Before your wings grow, you must put your own safety first, because you don't just belong to yourself anymore. You belong to the Alliance, the hope of all humanity. Yes. Long Haochen stood up and replied respectfully. Qiu Yonghao sighed. I really envy the Knights Templars. My words are always valid. As long as you're willing, the door of the warrior temple will always be open for you. Speaking up to this point, his eyes suddenly lit up. He suddenly had an idea. Long Haochen, what if you take over as the Knights Templars in the future and become the Temple Lord of the Warrior Temple? Long Haochen was shocked. Temple Lord, you think too highly of me. Qiu Yonghao chuckled and said, That's not impossible. It's not that I think highly of you. It's the ability that you've shown that makes me think highly of you. However, the prerequisite is that you must survive. I heard from Su Zhongliang that you came to the Warrior Temple for 3 matters. The most important thing had been done. Where the other two matters. Long Houchen replied, "My companions and I have just received a hunting mission. We're preparing to follow the Yu Yi merchant group into the demon's territory. However, our cultivation is already above the 6th rank. I'm afraid we won't be able to pass the inspection when we leave the southeastern fort." Qiu Yonghao replied, "That's simple. I'll just have someone inform them. What's the other matter?" Long Haochin went silent for a moment, then briefly explained his encounter in Star Search City. He didn't add any personal feelings to it. He only described the process. The warriors and the demons are fighting a bloody battle. Something like this happened at the rear. "Could you please pay attention to it, Temple Lord?" Qiu Yonghao frowned. "I understand. I'll pay attention to it. Is there anything else you need help from the warrior temple?" Long Haochin shook his head. A smile appeared on Qiu Yonghao's face. "Then, let me give you a big gift." "Ah," Long Haochin hurriedly said, "Senior, there's no need. The warrior temple has already given me a lot. Allowing me to try the aria of the goddess of light is already the most valuable gift you've given me. Not to mention, I also took a meteorite from outer space." Qiu Yonghao smiled mysteriously. "This secret is actually on you. However, in this world, only I know about it." Long Haochin curiously looked at the old temple lord. Early in the morning, the Yi merchant group's carriage slowly left the southeastern fort and headed towards the demon's territory. After receiving instructions from the warrior temple, the inspection along the way was much more relaxed. Long Haochin and his companions were sitting in a carriage in the middle of the merchant group. Finally, they were about to enter the demon's territory again. They were about to start their new mission. This time, their mood was completely different from the last time they entered the demon's territory. If they were nervous or excited in the past, then they were much calmer now. They also had a confidence that they didn't have in the past. The Yi merchant group was rich and imposing. The carriage that Long Haochin and the others were riding in was exactly the same as the one that Yi merchant group took when they first entered the demon's territory with Yi merchant group. The carriage was spacious and warm. There was even a table and a special cupboard with a large amount of prepared food. Opening the curtain, Long Haochin looked outside. They set off at dawn. By the time they left the southeastern fort, the sky outside had gradually brightened. However, the weather was not very good, and the sky was gray. Long Haochin took out a roll of sheepskin map from the Eternal Melody and spread it out on the table in the carriage. The map was densely packed with annotations, which showed the distribution of the various provinces of the demons, as well as the location of the demons and the demon lords in each province. Even the officials of the Temple League might not have such a detailed map. This map was naturally obtained by Yu Yi for Long Haochin. She made a condition, which was that Long Haochin must not give this map to the officials of the Alliance. Long Haochin pointed to a city in the Narik province and said, "This is the capital of the Narik province, and also the place where the demon birds are stationed. Our first mission will be completed here. About tonight, the Yi merchant group will arrive at the demon's border camp. If everything goes well, the merchant group will pass by the Narik province's capital city at noon tomorrow for a simple rest." After the ambush of the Yi merchant group is now very relaxed in the demon's territory. We will take this opportunity to go to Narik City and complete the mission of killing 5 golden demon birds. Then, we will follow the merchant group and continue into the inner regions of the demons. Wang Yuanyuan said, "Captain, if we follow the merchant group into Narik City and assassinate the golden demon birds, will it attract the attention of the demons in Narik City?" According to the map, there is a demon lord in Narik City. Long Haochin nodded and said, "It is inevitable to arouse suspicion. However, even if it arouses suspicion, they may not dare to search the merchant group. Even if they search, can we be found?" At this point, he couldn't help but reveal a smile. Wang Yuanyuan suddenly understood and nodded repeatedly. The others couldn't help but reveal smiles on their faces. Yes, it was not easy to find Long Haochin and the others. Why did Long Haochin dare to accept 16 missions, including the difficult mission of killing the 72nd Demon Lord? Apart from confidence in their own strength, the most important thing was that they had a life-saving method that other monster hunters didn't have. the Tower of Eternity. With this shelter, when they encountered a strong enemy, they could completely avoid the brunt of their attacks. A faint light flickered, and Long Houchin revealed a cold expression. Good. Then the first step of the plan is decided. I will let the Yu Yi merchant group help us determine the location of the golden demon birds. This time, in order to kill them in the shortest time possible, we must split up. Kai, and I will each kill a golden demon bird. Lin Xin, you and Han will team up. You will be in charge of killing the golden demon birds with the blue fire phoenix spiritual stove. Han will support you. Yuan, Sima, you will each be in charge of killing a golden demon bird. Inger will support you. Yes. Everyone roared in agreement, their eyes filled with excitement. After close to a year of seclusion, they already felt like they were ready to go. There was another chance to hunt demons. Moreover, many of them would be facing the rank 6 demons alone. This was the first time they encountered such powerful creatures. They didn't even dare to think about it. But now, they were full of confidence. The process of entering the demon's territory was very smooth. Just as Long Houchin said, the treatment the Yu Yi merchant group received after entering the demon's territory was much better than in the Temple League. Many of the demons already knew that Yu Yi was going to be the heaven-defying Demon Dragon Clan's crown prince and Demon Emperor's successor's crown princess. Who would dare to carefully inspect the Yu Yi merchant group? Moreover, with the last time the 3 demon gods mobilized an army to plunder the Yu Yi merchant group, they now had a smooth journey no matter where they went. This was also the reason why Long Houchin valued the Yu Yi merchant group. With this umbrella, they could save a lot of trouble. More importantly, the Yu Yi merchant group could also provide him with a lot of important information. It seemed that many of the 16 missions were very difficult, but with the help of the Yu Yi merchant group, their troubles could be reduced by at least a third, and the danger would inevitably be greatly reduced. After successfully passing through the demon's border checkpoint, the merchant group had already entered the Nara province of the demons the next morning. Just as Long Houchin had predicted, they arrived at the Narok province's capital, Narok City, at noon. The merchant group would also temporarily rest here for an hour before continuing their journey. For merchants of the scale of the Yu Yi merchant group, they would not stay in an inn during the process of trading. Living in an inn would undoubtedly increase their expenses and reduce their efficiency. Their carriages were all equipped with tents, and they would rest wherever they went. Therefore, after entering Narok City, they mainly replenished their water and some food. At the same time, they would trade some goods that they had brought to Narok City. 2 hours was enough. There were already people from a Yu Yi merchant group in Narok City. They had already prepared everything and were waiting for them, so that the merchant group's efficiency would be at its highest. Soon, the Yu Yi merchant group stopped in Narok City. After about half a cup of tea's time, the merchant group's steward quietly came to the carriage where Long Houchin and the others were and stuffed a ball of paper into it. Long Houchin opened the paper ball. Inside was a simple map of Narok City, marked with 5 red dots. Long Houchin spread out the map for his companions to memorize, then waved his hand slightly. Everyone quietly got off the carriage and went in different directions. The steward was the person in charge of the Yu Yi merchant group, and also one of Yu Ye's most trusted people. Before coming to Narok City, Long Houchin had told him to investigate the location of the golden demon birds. He had also made arrangements in advance, so he was able to immediately provide the specific location of the 5 golden demon birds to Long Houchin and the others. The steward chosen by Yu Yi was originally a spy that the Temple League had placed in the Yu Yi merchant group, and he was also a human. Naturally, he was not afraid of anything happening to him. Of course, he only vaguely knew that Long Houchin and the others were monster hunters, but he did not know which monster hunters they were. Long Houchin and the others were dressed similarly. Each of them was covered in a large cloak and wore a hat, so their faces could not be seen. This kind of dressing was not uncommon among the demons. In fact, it was common. This was because the environmental destruction in the demons' territory over the years had caused more sandstorms than in the Temple League's territory. High demons liked to wear this kind of large cloak when they went out. At the same time, the eyes of Long Houchin and the others naturally turned purple, and they were disguised as the Moon Devils. When arranging the operation, Long Houchen's arrangement was very clever. He and Kair each took one side, while the other three targets were in the middle. This way, if there was a problem, they could immediately go to the rescue. With the existence of the soul chain, they would naturally be able to feel the strong attacks. Long Houchen walked very fast. This was the first time everyone was separated, and he was still a little worried. He had to complete his task as soon as possible, and then go to pick up his friends. This was what he and Kair had to do. According to the map in his memory, Long Houchen kept going east. Although Nato City was the capital of the Narit province, it was not very big. Most of the people walking on the streets were demons. Of course, low-level demons like the ordinary dual-bladed demons were not allowed to enter the city. When these demons saw Long Houchen's disguise in human form, they all avoided him, not daring to approach him. The reason was simple. Only the high demons were in human form, and they would dress like Long Houchen. Moreover, the demons' perception was more sensitive than that of humans. Although they could not feel Long Houchen's attributes, they could vaguely feel a trace of danger from him. At least subconsciously, they were not willing to approach him. Soon, Long Houchen saw his target. It was a somewhat shabby restaurant, and the sign was crooked. Although the demons occupied most of the celestial demons' continent, the demons were deeply influenced by humans. In particular, the demons liked human food very much. The higher the demons were, the more they enjoyed eating and drinking human food. Therefore, the treatment of humans in the demon race had undergone an earth-shaking change from the Dark Ages 6,000 years ago to the present. Even humans captured from the Temple League would be treated well by the demons. Of course, the premise was that these humans had to surrender. If a chef was captured, the demons would even need to come forward and win him over. The Nara province was located on the border, but it was very poor. Otherwise, the three demons would not have dared to send a large army to attack the Yu Yi Chamber of Commerce. Here, even if it was just a small restaurant, only the powerful demons were qualified to enjoy it. For example, the small restaurant in front of him looked very dilapidated. There were 4 distinct black marks under the sign. This meant that only demons above grade 4 could enter. This was the class. Long Houchen walked slowly into the restaurant. His eyes swept across the small hall, and he saw his target at a glance. A golden devil bird was sitting in one of the best seats, eating and drinking. There were 4 dishes, and there was even a pot of wine. It looked very leisurely. Because it was noon, there were many demons eating in the dining hall. Most of them were grade 4 and grade 5 demons. There was only one grade 6 golden demon bird. Moreover, its golden skin was so obvious. Chapter 132. There were only 2 waiters in the restaurant, both of whom were humans. They were busy serving the dishes and didn't come over to greet Long Houchen. Long Houchen strode towards the golden devil bird. She walked to the dining table and gently knocked on the table. The golden devil bird was stunned. He was having a great time eating and drinking, so he wasn't in a good mood when he was suddenly interrupted. However, when he looked up and saw Long Houchen's slightly raised face, he was shocked. It should be pointed out that Long Houchen disguised himself as a moon devil. Even the moon devils wouldn't be able to recognize him, let alone this golden devil bird. He had purple eyes and an extremely handsome face. These were the characteristics of the moon devils. Looking at Long Houchen's cold eyes, he hurriedly stood up and asked, "You are?" Long Houchen raised his hand and waved his Moon Devil Viscount token in front of the golden devil bird. He said in a deep voice, "Come with me." Seeing the token, the golden devil bird's last trace of doubt disappeared. He hurriedly stood up and followed Long Houchen out of the restaurant. Many demons saw this scene, but they didn't even dare to breathe loudly. Although they didn't see Long Houchen's appearance, they could imagine what kind of existence he was if even a big shot like the golden devil bird was summoned. After leaving the restaurant, Long Houchen stopped at the entrance. The golden devil bird asked carefully, "Lord Viscount, what are your orders?" "Come here." Long Houchen waved at him coldly. The golden devil bird hurriedly went to Long Houchen's side. He was even feeling heartache for his food and prayed that Long Houchen's orders were simple so that he could finish his food. Otherwise, those guys would definitely benefit from it. A hint of coldness appeared in Long Houchen's eyes as he looked at the submissive golden demon bird. He raised his right hand and pressed it on the demon bird's shoulder. Do you know your crime? Ah. The golden demon bird raised its head in shock and looked at Long Houchin. Right at this moment, the alarm in his heart suddenly rose, but it was already too late. Long Houchin's right hand grabbed his thick neck like an iron pincer. The cold sword intent flashed and disappeared. The pupils of the golden bird demon's eyes dilated in shock. Was Long Houchin's right hand that easy to touch? That was the aria of the goddess of light. A sword intent pierced into the depths of the golden demon bird's brain, crushing it to pieces. He died instantly. He couldn't be more dead, but he didn't even have the chance to scream. A Type 6 powerhouse fell in the hands of Long Houchin just like that. This had nothing to do with strength. The key was that Long Houchin was too similar to the Moon Devils. His cloak spread out slightly, blocking the view from the other side of the street. Eternal Melody's golden light flickered, and the golden demon bird's corpse was quietly kept into his bag. Without any hesitation, Long Houchin turned around. He was going to support Lin, Xin, and Hanyu. Long Houchin's side ended the battle without attracting any attention. However, his companions weren't so peaceful. Noon was a good time for Long Houchin and the rest to move. This was because it was mealtime for the demons. Demons were different from humans. They only ate twice a day. This was especially so for the high-level demons. Therefore, in the general class Monster Hunt 64, everyone's goal was to eat. Although Lin Xion's looks couldn't be compared to Long Houchin, he had no problem pretending to be a normal moon devil. Furthermore, his target was much easier to find than Long Houchin. This was because this golden demon bird was eating at a roadside stall. From this, it could be seen that although the demons were strong, they were far behind the humans in terms of social economy and civilization. After all, they were outsiders. In the Temple League, it was almost impossible for a Type 6 powerhouse to eat at a roadside stall. The golden demon bird's meal was simple. It was a huge pot with some unknown meat stew inside. It would toss in some minced meat and cook it before taking it out to eat. This person was accompanied by 4 great bird devils who were eating with him. Lin Xin and Hanyu looked at each other, and Hanyu nodded. A faint blue light flashed in Lin Xion's eyes, and immediately after, a loud and clear phoenix cry resounded through the streets. Why were spiritual stoves powerful? Because spiritual stoves had an advantage that normal skills couldn't compare to, and that was instant release. Furthermore, almost all spiritual stoves' abilities would increase in power as the user grew stronger. These were the reasons why spiritual stoves were powerful. When a huge blue phoenix charged at the golden demon bird, all the demons on the street were dumbfounded. The golden demon bird was a Type 6 powerhouse after all, and immediately reacted when he sensed something was wrong. He pulled with both hands, each pulling a great demon bird. At the same time, he channeled his spiritual energy, and blinding lightning wrapped around his body. However, the blue phoenix's arrival was too sudden, and that was all he could do. A cold smile appeared on Lin Xion's face, and the blue light in his eyes grew brighter. The blue fire phoenix suddenly rose a few notches into the air, and then abruptly dropped down. It actually completed a short and rapid ascent in the air, then a dive. Boom! A huge blue pillar of fire shot into the sky, and the blue phoenix returned. Within the flames, 4 great demon birds were instantly carbonized. The golden demon bird screamed, and its body twitched violently. Its huge body was almost instantly char-black. The terrifyingly high temperature was not something that his body could withstand. Even the Type 8 Zombie King was forced back by the blue phoenix's attack. At this time, a tall figure quietly appeared behind the golden demon bird that was struggling in the heart flame. A golden red light flashed, and the golden demon bird's struggle immediately stopped. With its head cut off, the tall figure flicked his foot, and the golden demon bird's head shot towards Lin Xion like a blue cannonball. A ball of blue flames rose and instantly wrapped around the golden demon bird's head. The flames were extinguished, and the head was stored in the storage magic tool. Lin Xion turned to leave, and Hanyu quickly followed. In the blink of an eye, the two disappeared into an alley. From Lin Xion's attack to the end of the battle, the entire process was completed in a few breaths. The assassination process was clean, and he quickly returned after it was over. At this time, Lin Xian's face was extremely pale, and his fists were clenched tightly. His body was even trembling slightly, but he gritted his teeth and endured. Under Han Yu's protection, he headed towards the caravan. After constant training and seclusion, his ability to withstand the Spirit Stove's backlash had become stronger. The Blue Fire Phoenix Spirit Stove's backlash was different from the Samsara Spirit Stove's. The Samsara Spirit Stove's backlash was almost impossible to resist, but the Blue Fire Phoenix Spirit Stove's backlash was a kind of training for Lin Xian. By constantly trying and experiencing it, his body's resistance to the Spirit Stove would become stronger. This was the only way to promote the Spirit Stove's future evolution. Just as Lin Xian finished his battle, Sima Xian also finished his mission. Sima Xian faced more enemies than Lin Xian and Han Yu. 6 great birds and 1 golden bird were eating together in the restaurant. Sima Xian wouldn't act like Long Haochen and tricked the golden bird into coming out. After confirming that the target was in the restaurant, he took out the evolved Light Vigor pill from his storage magic tool. The dark golden Light Vigor pill emitted an oppressive and terrifying aura. The thick chain had also extended from 30 feet to 15 feet. The huge metal ball whistled through the air as it hurtled towards the golden demon bird. The moment Sima Xian entered, this gold demon bird sensed that something was wrong. The killing intent from his body was too thick. Thus, when Sima Xian attacked, the golden bird leaped up in an attempt to dodge the Light Vigor pill's attack. At the same time, a golden lightning spear appeared in his hand. The 6 great birds also flew out and attacked Sima Xian from different directions. Sima Xian shook the thick metal chain in his right hand. The Light Vigor pill was lifted up and smashed towards the golden bird. This was a restaurant, after all. The golden bird didn't have the space to fly. It could only turn its body. At the same time, a golden lightning shot out from its spear towards the Light Vigor pill. However, when the golden bird's innate lightning landed on the Light Vigor pill, it instantly disappeared as if it had been devoured. Immediately afterward, the golden demonic bird felt a mountain-like force descend upon its body. Helpless, it could only use its spear to block. However, at this time, the 6 great birds had already reached Sima Xian's side and stabbed at him with their spears. "Go to hell!" Sima Xian roared. A huge white pillar of light suddenly erupted from his body and enveloped the 6 great birds along with their weapons. A terrifying scene appeared. The 6 great birds were instantly ignited by the milky white flames. They screamed miserably and fell to the ground. Their spears did pierce Sima Xian's body, but they only pierced through his cloak. This was the 6th rank defensive skill of a Saint Cardinal. It consumed a lot of spiritual energy, but it had a powerful purification effect. In order to end the battle quickly, Sima Xian directly used this powerful skill. At the same time, he killed the 6 great birds. The golden bird was already in close contact with a Light Vigor pill. Boom! Without any suspense, the spear was shattered and the great bird was sent flying. What was even more terrifying was that the Light Vigor pill flew along with the golden bird. It directly smashed through the roof of the restaurant. However, the golden bird wasn't sent flying. Instead, it seemed to be stuck to the Light Vigor pill. One could clearly see the Light Vigor pill shrouded in purple light. Next, 3 loud explosions sounded as 3 balls of purple light exploded on the golden bird's body. After that, there were no more golden birds. A golden magic crystal with lightning curling around, it was absorbed by the Light Vigor pill. Sima Xian pulled the chain, and the Light Vigor pill returned to his hand. He then turned around and left. However, not even a speck of ash was left of the golden bird. This was the terrifying power of the combination of the legend rank Light Vigor pill and the purple godly thunder spiritual stove. Crushing, absorption, and triple explosion. In terms of explosive power, as long as Long Haochen didn't accumulate power and Kair didn't use the Samsara spiritual stove, no one could surpass Sima Xian in terms of explosive power in the Commander Tier Monster Hunt 64. Even Lin Xian's Blue Fire Phoenix spiritual stove couldn't compare to the full power of the Light Vigor pill. In this operation, The one who fought the longest was Wang Yuanyuan. Wang Yuanyuan's fighting style was similar to Sima Xian's. After discovering her target, she raised the divine soul shield and charged. However, the golden devil bird she was facing was a little different from the other golden devil birds. The wings on its back emitted a dark golden luster. After seeing this golden bird, Wang Yuanyuan memorized its position. Then, she turned around to hide herself and took out the divine soul shield. The space gate's spiritual stove exploded. With a flash of silver light, she appeared behind that golden devil bird and swung the divine giant soul shield, which was inlaid with 4 hollow silver crystals. From Wang Yuanyuan's perspective, this explosive attack could probably break the golden bird's shield in half. However, this special golden bird's reaction was extremely fast. The moment Wang Yuanyuan appeared behind it and launched an attack, the golden bird's wings suddenly shot out and collided with the divine soul shield. Moreover, it didn't try to take the attack head-on. Instead, it borrowed the divine soul shield's powerful attack power to leap out. Crack, crack! The golden bird let out a blood-curdling screech. Its wings were completely broken. The divine soul shield still managed to hit its body. Bluish-purple blood with golden specks of light spurted out of its mouth. However, as its body flew out, it also took out a lightning spear that flickered with a dark golden color. Wang Yuanyuan was slightly stunned. He actually didn't die. However, she obviously wouldn't stop at this time. Her spiritual wings suddenly unfurled and her figure flashed. She rushed in front of the golden bird and slashed out with the divine soul shield. The golden bird was at a disadvantage because Wang Yuanyuan's attack was too sudden. The space gate's spiritual stove's teleportation made it unable to effectively defend against the previous attack. Moreover, as a golden bird, its wings were completely broken. It couldn't fly, so its strength was greatly reduced. Ding! The lightning spear stabbed the side of the divine soul shield. The tyrannical lightning's spiritual energy actually made Wang Yuanyuan's body numb. If it was her in the past, she would have lost the connection of her attacks. However, the current Wang Yuanyuan's external spiritual energy was even more tyrannical than the golden bird in front of her. How could a little numbness restrict her? The divine soul shield's attack didn't change. At the same time, it slightly tilted up and bounced off the golden bird's lightning spear. Her left foot stepped forward and the shield's surface directly slammed into the golden bird's body. There were spikes on the surface of her divine, giant soul shield. Moreover, at this moment, the shield's surface was already flashing with silver light. Roar! The golden bird was indeed extraordinary. In such a dangerous situation, it let out an angry roar and its body suddenly exploded with a powerful lightning storm. The powerful electricity scattered in all directions, causing the surface of its body to be instantly carbonized. However, the power of this all-out attack was already above the 7th order. Bird demons belonged to the Bitterly tribe. Their tribe didn't have the bloodline of the demon god. Thus, their status was only average among the demons. Among them, the strongest was the golden bird demon. However, among the golden bird demons, there was a small chance that they would evolve. About 1 in 100 golden birds could evolve to the 7th order and become a dark gold bird demon. In the entire Bitterly tribe, there were less than 100 golden birds. It wasn't clear whether Wang Yuanyuan's luck was good or bad. The one she encountered was actually a golden bird demon that had already begun to evolve. It was much stronger than ordinary golden birds, but it hadn't completely evolved to the dark gold rank. It was still a peak 6th order expert. Speaking of which, this golden bird demon was quite unlucky. If it was a real fight, even if Wang Yuanyuan could kill it, it would take a long time. This was a city with a demon god overseeing it. Even if this half-dark golden bird demon couldn't win, it could still run or wait for reinforcements. Unfortunately, it had encountered a spatial door spirit stove, without the ability to fly. So what if it had truly evolved to the dark gold rank? The lightning storm from this half-dark golden bird demon was indeed powerful. Wang Yuanyuan felt her entire body go numb. This kind of indiscriminate attack was not something that could be dodged with any technique. However, at the same time, the silver light on Wang Yuanyuan's shield had already shot out. She had already activated the skill the moment she used the shield to ram into the opponent. Space-splitting cannon. The divine soul shield, supported by 4 empty silver crystals, had already reached the legendary rank. The power of a skill that came with a legendary equipment was unimaginable. Wang Yuanyuan's entire body was surrounded by lightning. She stood in place, paralyzed, while the half-dark golden zither demon was sent flying. Its chest had completely caved in. Although it wasn't dead, it was paralyzed on the ground and couldn't get up. At this moment, a dark shadow flashed by. The half-dark golden bird demon's body stiffened, and in the next instant, its consciousness had completely fallen into darkness. With a flash of light, the corpse disappeared. A slim shadow quietly came to Wang Yuanyuan's side, pulled her arm, and the two of them quickly disappeared from streets. Ear-piercing screams rang out in the cities, and the entire city was in an uproar. A large number of demons began to search the entire city. As one of the most important races in the Narok province, the demon birds actually had 4 golden birds assassinated, and 1 golden bird demon had gone missing. In an instant, the upper echelons of the cities were shocked. The demon god in charge immediately ordered to close the city gates and search the entire city for human spies. When the order was issued and the city gates were closed, the Yi merchant group also arrived in front of the city gates, preparing to leave the city. The attack on the moonlit merchant group in Narok province last time had caused the demon god emperor's fury, and even now, the matter had not been completely pacified. After the demon general guarding the city reported to the demon god and carefully searched the merchant group, he still let them go. It would be strange if they could find them. After Long Haochen's group of 7 met up, he sent the others into the Tower of Eternity. He disguised himself as a manservant and concealed his aura. His young appearance became his best disguise. After smoothly following the merchant group out of the city, he teleported his companions back. After gathering together again, everyone couldn't help but high-five each other. Only Lin Xian, who was enduring the backlash of the spiritual stove, didn't look good. The first mission is completed. If we kill 5 golden devil birds and hand over their magic crystals, we'll get 30,000 contribution points. If we don't hand over the magic crystals, we can get 10,000 merit points. Long Haochen was also in a good mood at this time. Their first commander-level Monster Hunters mission was completed. It had only been 2 days since they left the Temple League. Of course, the mission of killing 5 golden devil birds was one of the easier ones among all of their missions. The Yi merchant group's journey was still all the way southeast, heading straight for the central province of the demons because it was the most prosperous place and the goods could be sold at the best price. The commander-level monster Hunt 64 followed the merchant group all the way into the interior of the demons. With the help of the map and Yi merchant group's information, they completed 5 more missions. Of course, they didn't attack every time the Yi merchant group arrived at a place. That would make it too easy for the Yi merchant group to become the target of suspicion. They would usually catch up to the Yi merchant group after completing the mission in a city that Yi merchant group passed through. Most of the time, they were scared but not in danger and didn't encounter any real resistance. 1/3 of the 16 missions were completed. However, as the Yi merchant group was about to enter the central province, it was time to part. It wasn't because there wasn't a target in the central province, but because Long Haochen had decided to start with the easy ones and finish the easier missions first before entering the central province. Watching the merchant group gradually disappear into the distance, Long Haochen said, "We can only rely on ourselves for the next mission. Our next target is the Jacques province. Let's go." The Jacques province was located to the north of the central province of the demons. There was a group of demons stationed there called the Jacques tribe, which was how the Jacques province got its name. The Jacques tribe was the same as the Kuli tribe, not a demon god race. Their people were also called Jacques demons. Among the demons, they could be considered a powerful close combat race. However, because their population wasn't large, they were rarely sent to the battlefield. Most of them stayed in the Jacques province to guard the north of the central province. The 7th mission that Long Haochen and the others were about to face was to kill 100 Jacques demons. The Jacques demons were rank 4 powerhouses, but they liked to gather in groups. The most powerful among them were rank 8 existences. Commanders also had the strength of rank 6. Completing this mission wasn't easy. At the very least, it was much more difficult than the missions that Long Houchen and the others had faced before. The entire Jacques demon race only had 5 or 6,000. Wanting to kill 100 Jacques demon empresses without the Jacques patriarch noticing or causing trouble for them wasn't an easy task, especially since they didn't have the Yi merchant group to investigate. They could only rely on themselves. According to the map, it only took them half a day to enter the territory of the Jacques province. It wasn't much different from the other provinces of the demons. In the region ruled by the demons, the land was very barren. There were very few fields and even very few forests. When the wind blew, yellow sand filled the sky. It was a desolate scene. Long Houchen tightened his large cloak and said to Kai Er beside him, "If we continue north for 2 to 3 days, we should be able to enter the capital of the Jacques province, Grand Jacques City. Almost all the Jacques demons are gathered in the city. This is good for our operation, but it'll be a bit troublesome to escape. After the mission in the Jacques province is completed, we'll continue east and proceed to the next mission." Kai said, "Do you want us to assassinate the patriarch of the Jacques clan? That's at least a king-grade mission. If we complete a mission above our rank, we should be able to get more rewards." Long Houchen shook his head and said, "No, it's too risky. At present, we still don't have the confidence to defeat a rank 8 powerhouse. Moreover, after reaching the 8th rank, there's a huge gap between each rank. The internal spiritual energy of a peak rank 8 powerhouse can reach as high as 100,000. It's definitely not something we can fight against. It's better to be safe and complete the mission as soon as possible before withdrawing from the Jacques province." The others didn't give any opinions. Long Houchen's arrangements had always been based on safety. Unless it was absolutely necessary, he would rarely take risks. Even if their strength had taken a qualitative leap, as the leader, he was still very cautious. Just as they were talking, a large rumbling sound suddenly came from the front. Because of the sand swirling up by the wind, they couldn't clearly see what demons were coming from afar. But, judging from the sound, they were only a few miles away from them. Moreover, there were quite a few of them. "Hide!" Long Houchen raised his hand. Everyone quickly dodged to the side and found a small mound to hide. Without needing him to say anything, Kai Er had already quietly swept out. She entered stealth mode and scouted in the direction of the sound. Being a scout was one of the assassin's tasks. "Leader, should we kill them until they piss in their pants?" Sima Xian chuckled, already holding his vigor pill of light. After entering the territory of the demons, he was the most dazzling one. With the help of the vigor pill of light, he had already killed many demons, including a rank 7 demons. Even though the rank 7 demons were being restrained by others, Sima Xian was still able to kill them in one hit. One could imagine how terrifying the attack power of his vigor pill of light was now. Long Houchen waved his hand and said, "Let's see which race the demons belong to and how many there are. Don't act rashly." Because the sandstorm was too strong, all of them were wearing a veil on their faces. Coupled with the earthen yellow cloak on their bodies, they were crouching behind the mound. Even if one looked down from the sky, it would be very difficult to discover them. Not long after, Kai Er had already floated back. She retracted her spiritual wings and said to Long Houchen in a low voice, "It's the Jacques clan. They're chasing after a group of monster hunters." "Ah, our people?" Long Houchen said in shock. Kai Er nodded and said, "The Jacques clan has dispatched at least 1,000 people. They're led by 2 rank 8 Jacques clan leader rank experts. There are also 30 to 40 rank 6 Jacques commanders. The group of monster hunters they're chasing should be king rank. They're fighting and retreating. But looking at their appearance, their situation isn't too good, because none of them are using spiritual wings. Their bodies are also stained with a kind of purple mucus. If this goes on, I'm afraid they won't be able to hold on. I can faintly see that there seems to be a purplish-black figure in the sky, following the advance of the Jacques clan. It's very likely that the purplish-black liquid came from it. I reckon it has the ability to restrict spiritual wings. All the comrades' gazes fell on Longhouchen. The question they were facing now was to save or not to save. Without a doubt, this Jacques clan army was extremely powerful, with 2 rank 8 Jacques commanders keeping watch, and so many Jacques demons they wouldn't stand a chance if they fought recklessly. However, the enemy was chasing after a king rank monster hunters. Longhouchen turned around and looked at his comrades. If we save them, we're very likely to face a huge crisis. If we don't save them, our comrades may fall here. What do you say? Boss, let's go. Sima Xian was the first to display a strong fighting spirit. Everyone also nodded to Longhouchen one after another. Longhouchen slightly narrowed his eyes and said, Kair, I'll leave that guy in the sky to you. If I didn't guess wrong, it should be a spore demon. Demons are rank 6 aerial support experts. This spore demon's fighting strength isn't strong, but it's extremely annoying. They can spray a large area of mucus. Once you're infected, it's very difficult to clean. Moreover, you'll lose the ability to release spiritual wings, and your speed will be greatly reduced. It's an important support branch of the demon's air force. You go get rid of it, then rendezvous with us to ensure a path of retreat. After killing the spore demon, we'll move. We'll kill our way into the enemy's formation from the flank. We won't directly clash with the enemy. As long as we give our comrades a chance to escape, that's enough. After we're done, immediately fly into the sky and escape. Among the Jacques clan, only experts of the rank 6 and above have the ability to fly. The only ones that can give us trouble are the 2 rank 8 Jacques commanders. Everyone must listen to my commands. At the crucial moment, I'll bring up the rear. You guys follow Hao Yue and leave. Then I'll use Hao Yue to teleport to your side. As long as we have enough time to activate the Eternal Melody's teleportation, we'll be safe. No one is to fight, understand? Inger, you. He then told Chuning a few words alone. He had no choice but to explain his arrangements clearly. Otherwise, with the relationship between him and his comrades, who would be willing to let him bring up the rear? Kai. Nodded, and the black spiritual wings appeared once again. Her figure flashed and broke through the sky. Her body had already entered stealth mode in the process. With her cultivation reaching the rank 6, coupled with her own invisibility, under the double invisibility, she could remain in a semi-invisible state even when using her spiritual wings to fly at high speed. As long as the enemy's cultivation was lower than hers, she wouldn't have to worry about being detected. Longhouchen was extremely confident in Kai. The spore demons were only rank 6 demons. Without the support of other troops, they were trash. Just as Longhouchen finished deploying everything, the rumbling sounds in the distance were getting closer and closer. The air was filled with yellow sand. Longhouchen and the others could barely make out the silhouettes in front of them moving forward at high speed. Spears kept flying behind them, and the ear-piercing sound of them tearing through the air reverberated through the air. The Jacques demons had the mentality of a centaur. Their upper bodies were very similar to humans, but their chest, abdomen, and back were covered with black scales. Their faces were slightly longer than that of humans, and they looked very sinister. Their lower bodies had 4 hooves like horses, and they were good at using and throwing spears. Looking at the humans in front, they were indeed in a very bad situation. Behind them was a knight. His mount was a powerful earth dragon that was over 7 meters long. Rays of golden light constantly shone from his body, blocking most of the attacks. The others were all riding on different kinds of magical beasts. Obviously, they were mounts summoned by summoners. It was precisely because of this that they were able to escape. Although ordinary Jacques demons couldn't fly, their speed on the ground was still extremely fast. Each Jacques demon carried at least 4 spears, and they constantly threw them forward and then picked them up. Those with wings on their backs were the Jacques commanders of the Jacques race. The 2 Jacques demons in the lead were extremely tall. Their entire bodies were over 3 meters tall. They were the 2 experts of the 8th step. Although they only had 1 spear, it was extremely huge. Every time they launched an attack, the air would explode with a thunderous roar. The human knight's earth dragon already had many wounds on its body. However, That knight was indeed valiant. Under the treatment of a priest, the support of a magician, and the harassment of an assassin, he was actually able to forcibly resist the attacks of those two Jacques commanders of the Eighth Step. Moreover, if one looked carefully, they would discover that this knight's silver armor was not ordinary. He had been hit several times by the enemy, but he seemed to be unharmed. Mithril Foundation Battle Armor. Mithril Foundation Knight. Monster hunters were the most elite existences of mankind. King-class monster hunters were already at the middle to high level among all monster hunters. Advancing from the general class to the king class was a qualitative leap. One needed to pay 1,000,000 contribution points to advance, and that was easier said than done. Although this Mithril Foundation Knight didn't have the strength of the 8th step, he was at least at the peak of the 7th step. He wielded the heavy sword and shield in his hands with great force. He was extremely powerful. Soon, the vanguard of the Jacques demons had already chased after the king-class monster hunters and charged past the mound where Long Houchin and the others were hiding. Long Houchin gestured to Chun-Ing, who nodded, and immediately sat cross-legged on the ground and began to chant an incantation. An illusory and gentle white light surrounded her body and spread outwards. In that gentle halo, Chun-Ing's entire body sank into a strange rhythm. Previously, he didn't let her use magic because he was afraid that the two Jacques leaders of the 8th step would discover it. At the same time, in a flash of purple light, Long Haoyue's huge figure had already appeared beside everyone. Hanyu had also summoned his evil eye. Long Houchin raised his head and looked towards the sky. In the midst of a mournful scream, a huge, round figure with 6 wings on its body descended from the sky. This guy's body was at least 5 meters in diameter. If it wasn't for its 6 wings, it probably wouldn't be able to fly at all. Its huge body directly smashed into the ground. "Madol, go!" Long Houchin shouted in a low voice. Piglet Madol's speed was extremely fast. After swallowing a magic crystal, he had already soared into the sky. His small eyes flashed and locked onto the dead spore demon that had fallen to the ground. In the next moment, a strong purple light surged, and Madol had already risen into the sky. In the process of ascending, his body rapidly changed and unexpectedly also turned into the appearance of a spore demon. "Go!" Long Houchin shouted loudly. The 4 wings on his back flashed, and he took the lead to rush out. The others all mounted on Long Haoyue's broad back, leaving only Chun-Ing, who was chanting an incantation. They directly rushed towards the Jacques demon army from the side. The Jacques demons' reaction was still quite fast. When they discovered the enemy, dozens of Jacques demons immediately turned around and threw the spears in their hands towards Long Houchin's group. Dazzling golden light suddenly erupted, and Long Houchin instantly accelerated like a golden meteor. At the same time, a large expanse of golden light erupted from his back and directly fell into the Jacques demon formation. At this time, Long Houchin didn't use the glorious sacred shield. At this time, his left hand had ripples of light, and his right hand had already released the aria of the goddess of light. He was like a golden god of death rushing into the enemy group. Wherever he passed, all the spears were turned into flying ashes by the tyrannical light elements. Chapter 133. Yiting had already quietly appeared behind Long Houchin. She was the one who had released that light magic. Jacques demons were worthy of being one of the strongest close combat units of the demons. They were very powerful in both long-range and close-range combat. Immediately, more than 10 Jacques demons charged towards Long Houchin. Long Houchin wanted to finish the battle quickly, and even wanted to complete the mission they had prepared here. Naturally, he wouldn't hold anything back. He swept out the heavy swords in his hands at the same time. Rippling light cutting sword. At this time, the difference between the 2 heavy swords in his hands could be seen. They both had sharp sword intent, but the rippling light on the left only killed 3 Jacques demons, while the aria of the goddess of light on the right spat out a terrifying blade of light that was 10 meters long. Wherever it passed, it was invincible. At least 10 Jacques demons were cut in half at the waist by this sweep. Not to mention the enemies. Even Long Houchen himself didn't expect the power of the aria of the Goddess of Light to be so great. When completing the mission before, they had never been caught in a group battle. Only now did Long Houchen realize how terrifying the power of a divine sword in a group battle could be. Under normal circumstances, the aria of the Goddess of Light could spit out 6 feet of sword light, not to mention when it was infused with pure light elements by Long Houchen. When this divine sword had been sealed, countless people had tried to open its seal, but to no avail. Even a powerhouse of the 9th step had failed. Why? Because what was needed to open this divine sword wasn't a huge amount of spiritual energy of the light attribute, but pure spiritual energy of the light attribute. Therefore, Long Houchen could succeed. With the support of this monstrous sword intent, Long Houchen was like a tiger in a flock of sheep. The wings on his back flapped again, and his whole body directly drilled into the enemy group. Immediately after, an incomparably tyrannical golden vortex exploded in the center of the Jacques demons. The 7th-step skill of the Punishment Knight, Bladestorm. Although Long Houchen's cultivation hadn't reached the 7th step yet, he was a divine favored and could use some 7th-step skills that weren't too powerful. This was because he had the full support of Yiting. At this moment, if one were to look closely, they would discover that Yiting was tightly pressed against Long Houchen's back as his body spun rapidly, as if she had melted. Circles of golden ripples spread out from Yiting's body, absorbing a large amount of light elements in the air and injecting them into Long Houchen's body. Bladestorm was a powerful AoE skill. It could be said to be the upgraded version of the warrior's Whirlwind Slash. The stronger the spiritual energy and the stronger the weapon, the more powerful it would be. As soon as Long Houchen used this skill, everything within a radius of 30 meters turned into a golden ocean. More than 20 Jacques demons who bore the brunt of the attack were instantly ground to dust by the terrifying golden light. With a loud roar, Hao Yue's huge body had already charged over. Its thick tail swept out, brazenly whipping away several Jacques demons. Immediately after, its 4 big heads were like magic cannons at the top of a fortress, exploding one tyrannical magic after another. Han Yu, Sima Xian, and Wang Yuanyuan jumped down from Hao Yue's back. Sima Xian rushed to the front, blocking the enemies in front of Hao Yue so that it could fight magic steadily. Han Yu and Wang Yuanyuan were on its left and right. Lin Xian didn't use any offensive magic, but became the defender. Fire elemental shields flickered in the air at an almost instantaneous speed, helping his companions resist the enemy's attacks. This was the first time they faced a group battle after entering the demon's territory. Seeing Long Houchen's terrifying outbreak, everyone's heart was ignited with a raging fighting spirit. This was also the first time they went all out. Sima Xian swung the vigorous ball of light in his hand. Even if he didn't use the spiritual stove of purple godly thunder, the terrifying metal ball only made cracking sounds wherever it passed. Its power was even comparable to that of Long Houchen's Bladestorm. Moreover, don't forget that he didn't use any skills. He relied entirely on the power of the vigorous ball of light and his own formidable strength. Wang Yuanyuan also wielded the divine soul shield in her hand. She didn't need the empty silver crystal at all. Not a single Jacques demon could withstand a heavy blow from the divine soul shield. On the other side, Han Yu's battle strength was just as valiant. Wherever the legendary giant sword, the berserk blood, went up and down, a bloody light burst out. In just a short time after they rushed into the enemy's formation, over 100 Jacques demons had already fallen. In other words, their mission was close to completion. The appearance of Long Houchen's group was so sudden that the Jacques demons in front of them didn't react until now. The 2 Jacques chiefs at the front roared angrily. Behind them, over 10 Jacques commanders of the 6th grade led the army to charge back and attack Long Houchen's group. As for the 2 Jacques leaders, they led the remaining 20 Jacques commanders to pursue the King grade demon hunt squads. Undoubtedly, the 2 Jacques chiefs reacted very quickly and adjusted their situation quite well. However, they had still underestimated Long Houchen and the others who had appeared from behind. In fact, they weren't the only ones who underestimated the General Class Monster Hunt 64. Even Long Houchen's group had underestimated themselves. In their minds, the fourth-grade experts should at least be able to resist their attacks. However, when the battle really started, they discovered that these fourth-grade Jacques demons were like papier-mâché under their attacks. A year of seclusion had brought about earth-shattering changes to the general class Monster Hunt 64. Their external and internal spiritual energy had been greatly improved. Their mental state had become more stable. Coupled with the enhancement of their equipment and the spiritual stove that each of them had, their overall strength was even comparable to that of the newly promoted King-class Monster Hunters. Fireball, with a diameter of 1 meter, shot out from Xiaohua's mouth and exploded in the distance. Dozens of Jacques demons were caught in the sea of fire. Greenie, on the other hand, was constantly spitting out wind blades. Unlike Fireball, the magic it launched wasn't very strong. However, as if it had eyes, every wind blade would find a Jacques demon and specifically attack their throats. Light, on the other hand, was spitting out a golden light that connected it with Long Houchen. It was constantly injecting its light attribute into Long Houchen's body through Brilliant World. Blue, on the other hand, raised its head proudly. The butterfly-shaped horn on its head emitted a faint blue light, and a large number of icicles were spitting out in all directions. Not only could it effectively kill and injure the enemy, but it could also reduce the enemy's speed. It could be said that Hao Yue could now be used as 4 magicians, and all of them were 6th-grade magicians. Under such circumstances, by the time those 6th-grade commander-level Jacques demons had rushed over, the number of ordinary Jacques demons had already exceeded 200, and it was still rapidly increasing. After a round of killing, Long Houchen had already quickly returned to his companion's side. Seeing those Jacques leaders rushing over, he snorted coldly and rushed towards them with large strides. A black silhouette just happened to appear beside him at this moment. Long Houchen turned his head to look and saw Kai Air lightly nodding at him. The two of them advanced almost side by side and killed their way towards those Jacques leaders. A mass of purplish-black liquid suddenly fell from the sky, and a large amount of liquid dispersed in the air. However, this time it wasn't aimed at the monster hunters, but fell accurately on the 2 8th-grade Jacques leaders, as well as the 20 Jacques leaders they were leading. Their speed decreased sharply, and their wings became heavy. This caused the originally extremely advantageous speed of these powerful Jacques demons to disappear in an instant. Roar! The Jacques leaders raised their heads in disbelief, and just happened to see that huge mass of purplish-black figure squirming and preparing to spit out a second mouthful of mucus. Without a doubt, this was naturally Piglet Madol's transformation. He slightly adapted to the Spore Demon's ability, and then launched an attack from the sky. The Jacques leaders on the left let out an angry roar and pointed the long spear in their hands towards the sky. A pitch-black light soared into the sky and went straight for Piglet Madol. In that instant, the air seemed to be torn apart, and the sky darkened amidst the ear-piercing whistling sound. A glaring golden light suddenly flashed violently, and the swift and fierce holy flames collided with the black light in the air. Although it wasn't able to completely destroy the black light, it made it lose its lock-on effect. The one who made the move was the Knight of the King-tier Monster Hunters. Madol's whole body stiffened the moment he was locked on by the 8th-grade Jacques leaders, and was about to transform back and run away. However, he suddenly felt the pressure of the lock-on disappear, and his fat body twisted in the air and immediately dodged the attack. Its dodging ability was trained by the 12th Holy Guard Red Skull. With a puff, another mouthful of thick purplish-black mucus was spat out. This time, it was aimed at the Jacques army on the other side. Stamping on the ground with his left foot, Long Houchen jumped up and thrusted out the aria of the Goddess of Light in his right hand, colliding with the tip of a Jacques leader's long spear. A strange scene appeared. The tough, long spear of the Jacques leader was easily destroyed in front of the aria of the Goddess of Light's spiritual pearl. Immediately after, thousands of lights and shadows exploded in front of the Jacques leader. Even if it had scales on its body, and the support of dark spiritual power wasn't weak, How could it resist the demon-slaying flash launched by the aria of the goddess of light? Its body instantly turned into a sieve of blood. The soaring Long Houchen lightly flapped his right spiritual wings, and his body slightly tilted in the air and flashed past the Jacques leader. He swung his heavy sword with both hands at the same time. Dual sword Azura chop. After such a long period of training, he could finally use the powerful Azura chop with only one hand. At the same time he launched this attack, a fierce white light was suddenly released with his body as the center, enveloping the dozen or so Jacques leaders that were rushing over. However, this skill wasn't released by Long Houchen, but by Yating, who had been chanting an incantation for a long time. The 7th grade light spell, Holy Deterrence. Using a spell of a higher rank was nothing to Yating, who was a light elemental spirit. It was just that the chanting time was a little longer. If this spell was used against ordinary enemies, it could only temporarily deter them, and at the same time, cause them to suffer light elemental damage. At most, they wouldn't be able to move for 2 seconds. However, when Holy Deterrence was used against dark elemental enemies, its power would increase exponentially, especially when used against opponents whose strength was lower than the magic rank. The effect would be even more powerful. A layer of milky white flames could clearly be seen burning on the bodies of all the Jacques leaders. They, who were about to besiege Long Houchen and Kair, let out mournful screams, and their bodies twitched violently, falling into a stunned state due to the deterrence effect. If one were to look down from the sky, they would be able to see that after the white light exploded, 2 silhouettes, one gold and one black, passed through the crowd like flowing water. Next, corpses fell behind these 2 silhouettes. All 13 6th grade Jacques leaders were annihilated. The 2 silhouettes, gold and black, converged. Long Houchen and Kair looked at each other and saw the astonishment in each other's eyes. Although they had the confidence to get rid of these dozen or so Jacques leaders, they didn't expect the process to go so smoothly. Even without the help of Yating's magic, they wouldn't have faced too much difficulty. And with Yating's magic, killing these Jacques leaders was as easy as killing ordinary Jacques. When more than a quarter of the army was defeated by the enemy without any losses, it would not be easy for them to maintain their fighting spirit. Under the tyrannical offensive of the General Tier Monster Hunt 64, the Jacques army was finally routed. They fled in all directions. At this time, the 2 8th grade Jacques leaders on the other side were also in shock, and at the same time fell into a dilemma. Long Houchen and the others, of course, wouldn't chase after the ordinary Jacques demons. Instead, they went straight for the powerful Jacques demons, because their original goal was to rescue their comrades. But they didn't expect to be able to defeat the Jacques army. The Jacques demons who fled in all directions didn't even care about their leaders. They only cared about running for their lives. This kind of situation was almost impossible in the army of the Temple League. On the other side, the Ace Monster Hunters also stopped running, but stopped in their tracks to block the attacks of these powerful Jacques demons. In this team, the most powerful ones were the Mithril Foundation Knight and the Summoner. Relying on the Summoner's continuous summoning at the expense of a large amount of spiritual power, they withstood the attacks of these powerful Jacques demons, and waited for Long Houchen and the others to attack from the front and back. The 2 Jacques chiefs of the 8th step constantly let out angry roars, gathering the scattered Jacques demons. At the same time, one of them led 6 Jacques commanders to meet Long Houchen and the others. Formation. Long Houchen shouted. He was about to face the 8th grade demons, and this was also his second time facing 8th grade opponents. Of course, he couldn't face them in a scattered formation like before. Yating floated in the air, standing on the head of Hao Yue's 4-headed Little Light, chanting an incantation with Little Light, injecting a tyrannical light spiritual power into Long Houchen. At the same time, the entire General Tier Monster Hunt 64 was in action. In their eyes, there was only one target, and that was the 8th grade Jacques leaders. As for those 6th grade ones, what could they do? Chapter 134. Right at this moment, 3 magical beasts of different shapes, 2 of them of the 5th rank and one of the 7th rank, dashed down from a small hill in the distance, heading towards the battlefield. Chening was sitting on the back of the magical beast of the 5th rank. Long Haochen had previously urged her to use the Living Soul Gate in order to cover the retreat. According to his plan, once the rescue was completed, he would rely on the spored demon transformed from a dull piglet to restrict the enemy's ability to fly, and then use Chening-er's summoned magical beast and himself to cover the retreat. That would give his companions time to escape. However, no one had expected such a change to occur on the battlefield. The 1,000-strong Jacques demon army actually collapsed under their attacks. The battlefield was ever-changing. When Chening-er saw the situation on the battlefield clearly, she naturally didn't want to fall behind. She brought her summoned magical beast and rushed over to regroup with her companions, fighting together with them. The 8th rank was indeed the 8th rank. Although the Jacques leader had been affected by the mucus of the spore demon, his speed was still very fast. His forehooves flew, and he charged straight towards Long Haochen's group of 6. In the process of charging forward, circles of black light spread out from under his feet, and the scales on his body were covered with a layer of pitch-black gloominess. Tiny black flames began to burn around his body, burning away that hateful mucus. At the same time, it also frantically increased the imposing manner of the Jacques leader. Rays of light flickered on the surface of the pitch-black spear. When he was less than 50 meters away from Long Haochen's group, the Jacques leader roared towards the sky. A faint black shadow spread out from his back, as if a black hole that could devour everything had opened its mouth behind him. He turned halfway, and his right arm that was holding the spear straightened behind him. Then, he fiercely threw it towards Long Haochen's group. Strangely enough, it was clearly a black spear that flew out like a shocking rainbow. However, the Jacques leader was still holding the spear in his hand. "Careful, it's the sky dominating extermination," shouted the ace monster hunter's knight in the distance. However, he couldn't help Long Haochen because he couldn't even take care of himself. Previously, in order to avoid getting injured, the 2 Jacques race leaders hadn't used their full strength, but now it was clearly different. Their subordinates had suddenly been defeated, so the 2 powerhouses of the 8th step were truly enraged. Although their status among the demons wasn't as revered as that of the demon gods, as the 1st and 2nd chiefs of the Jacques race, they practically ruled over the entire Jacques province. Although the Jacques province was the smallest among the 24 provinces of the demons, it was still one of the 24 provinces. At this time, they were actually forced into such a passive position by a dozen or so humans, and a large number of their capable subordinates were killed. It would be strange if the 2 patriarchs weren't angry. The moment that pitch-black spear was thrown, the sky suddenly darkened. Even the yellow sand that had been swept up by the gale was instantly dispersed to both sides. It felt like the Azura chop cleaving apart spiritual power, but on a much larger scale. The extremely frightening and powerful pressure made everyone feel a chill in their hearts. Everyone even felt that the sky-dominating extermination was aimed at them. The skill launched by a powerhouse of the 8th step was indeed frightening. The black spear's trajectory couldn't even be clearly seen. However, at this time, Long Haochen proudly rushed forward. A white light shot out from his back and accurately landed on the body of the Jacques leader of the 8th step. It was the Saint's spiritual stove's attraction skill. In the face of a strong enemy, facing difficulties head-on was the courage that a guardian knight must possess. No matter how powerful the enemy was, the guardian knight would always be the first to rush forward. With a flick of his left hand, the ripple of light fell into Yu Ting's hand. Long Haochen held the aria of the goddess of light with both hands. His body that was rushing forward suddenly stopped in mid-air. Immediately afterward, his whole body seemed to enter a strange realm. It looked very slow as he made an upward slash. One-on-one. Yes, Long Haochen wanted to rely on his own strength to resist the powerful attack of a Jacques demon of the 8th step. At this time, the most obvious change on his body appeared in the aria of the goddess of light. The originally rich sword aura on the blade suddenly converged, and the blade once again became dark gold. Along with his upward slash that seemed to have a mysterious trajectory, Long Houchen gave people the feeling that he was using this heavy divine sword to gently lift the veil of a bride. If there was a real expert in the sword here, they would certainly be shocked by the scene before their eyes. What Long Houchen displayed was no longer just a simple body and sword fusion, but also the unity of man and nature. The sword intent was contained within, condensed and not scattered. It was the true essence of a sword. Perhaps he didn't know any gorgeous swordsmanship, but since he obtained the aria of the goddess of light, his understanding of the sword was no longer comparable to before. Puff! The darkness and the dark gold collided in the air. Long Houchen's whole body trembled, and his body floated back a few meters in the air, only stopping when he collided with Hao Yue's huge body. However, that pitch-black spear shadow was forcibly flicked away by him and soared straight into the sky. Yes, it was not a head-on collision, but a flick. After all, Long Houchen was only a rank 6. Although his internal spiritual energy was not far from 10,000, he would always be a rank 6 Radiance Knight before breaking through 10,000. Even with legendary grade equipment, it was impossible to fight a rank 8 powerhouse head-on. However, he relied on his own strength to receive the tyrannical sky's annihilation. Speaking of which, his sword was very simple. It changed the enemy's attack trajectory and cut off the enemy's thought and skill combination. But how could it be so easy to actually sit up? This was the perfect combination of his own strength and sword intent. It looked like a simple flick, but it was the fusion of Long Houchen's understanding of sword intent and ancient martial skills during his seclusion. When the Jacques chief saw that Long Houchen had unexpectedly deflected his attack, he was also shocked. He never expected that this fellow, whose spiritual energy fluctuations were far inferior to the other knight, could actually receive his attack. Moreover, he had so cleverly deflected the tyrannical sky's annihilation. A strong killing intent pervaded the air, and the Jacques chief roared once again. The wings on his back slightly unfolded, and his 4 hooves stamped on the ground as he charged forward with all his strength. Since long-range attacks couldn't kill the opponent, then close combat attacks would be fine. Under the effect of the saint's spiritual stove, his current target could only be Long Houchen. Long Houchen took a deep breath and calmed his surging qi and blood. The substantial increase in external spiritual energy was indeed very beneficial. His body's ability to endure was much stronger than before. Otherwise, even if he deflected the opponent's attack, he was afraid that he would still be injured. The 4 wings on his back unfolded and suddenly flapped, pushing Long Houchen's body to brazenly rush out. Behind him, Yu Ting nimbly flipped over and turned into a golden light as she chased after Long Houchen. In a sense, she was a part of Long Houchen's body. Therefore, it was very easy for her to keep up with his speed. The other people of the general class Monster Hunt 64 also rapidly followed. Kai Er once again disappeared into the air. The vigorous light pill in Sima Xian's hand had already whistled and hovered above his head. Purple light flickered on his chest, and a faint burnt smell wafted out. This was the backlash of the spiritual stove of purple godly thunder. Wang Yuan quietly installed 4 pieces of empty silver crystals on her divine spirit shield. Han Yu just put away the shield and held the wild scarlet blood sword with both hands. They were already prepared to welcome this difficult battle. This was also the first time they completely relied on their own strength to fight against a powerhouse of the 8th step. If it was in Jacques City, Long Houchen definitely wouldn't have made such a choice. But it was different here. This was the wilderness. If they really couldn't beat the opponent, they still had the ability to escape. Since that was the case, why not try to fight against the demons of the 8th step? Only such a powerhouse could truly test the extent of their current strength. The Jacques leader angrily shouted. He raised his 2 front hooves and suddenly stomped on the ground. With a loud bang, a thick black stream of air rushed towards the charging Long Houchen. At the same time, the long spear in his right hand had already transformed into thousands of black rays, going straight to envelop Long Houchen. Approaching within 10 meters of the Jacques leader of the 8th step, Long Houchen suddenly felt the air become viscous. The thick dark element actually completely excluded the light element. Moreover, there was a strong suction coming from the Jacques leader, pulling his body. A tyrannical pressure accompanied its attack, like a mountain pressing down on him. Eighth step. This was the eighth step. The last time he faced the moon demon of the eighth step, Long Houchin had taken the conjoined spirit increasing pill, so it wasn't very obvious. But this time it was different. Facing the Jacques leader of the eighth step alone, the huge pressure had greatly affected his willpower. This was the difference in strength, the absolute suppression of spiritual power. If it wasn't for the fact that Long Houchin's own spiritual power was of the purest light attribute, it would have been very difficult for him to even have the intention to fight against this expert of the eighth step. Of the four wings, the bottom two flapped down with force, while the top two remained unchanged. Long Houchin's body suddenly rose a few meters in the state of charging forward. He just happened to dodge the black stream of air produced by the Jacques leader's front hooves stomping on the ground. At the same time, Long Houchin's whole body once again lit up with that strange dark golden light. Body and sword as one, he weaved through the shadows of the Jacques leader's spear. The aria of the goddess of light in his hand seemed to be deftly pointed out, while he himself was like a small boat in a raging storm and huge waves. The Jacques leader felt it the most. No matter how he looked at it, he felt that this human should have fallen instantly in front of his attack. But every time he felt that he was about to kill his opponent, the opponent's heavy sword would always be able to point at the crucial point of his spear's strength, and he would always be able to use his spiritual wings to change direction and avoid the danger of certain death. At this moment, Long Houchin was like a shadow following the body, rippling amidst the afterimages of the spear. However, he did not clash head-on with the Jacques leader. He completely relied on his technique to shake the spear, causing the rank 8 powerhouse to be unable to erupt with its strongest attack. No matter who it was, this feeling would be extremely painful. The Jacques leader roared, and his spear suddenly stabbed into the ground. Instantly, the indiscriminate black light of the secret skill spread out like a whirlpool. He thought to himself, "Let's see how you can dodge this time." Yes, in the face of such an omnidirectional attack, Long Houchin couldn't dodge it no matter what. But at this moment, his body suddenly froze in the air, both hands holding the aria of the goddess of light, and brazenly slashed down. The dark golden heavy sword blossomed with a blazing white light, and in that instant, both of Long Houchin's hands clearly turned transparent gold. The golden light flashed, and the black light cut through the middle, streaking across both sides of Long Houchin's body. And also at this moment, a huge figure directly crashed into him from behind. It was Haoyue. Not only that, with a crisp long cry, a golden light flashed, and a figure directly rushed towards the aria of the goddess of light. The figure that crashed from behind was Haoyue. Haoyue's body was at least 10 meters long, and as he sprinted, he carried a threatening aura. At this moment, be it him or Long Houchin, their bodies were rippling with a layer of purple light, especially their eyes. That demonic purple light even made the 8th step Jacques leader's heart tremble when he saw it. As Long Houchin's body trembled violently, a dense purple light brazenly filled his body, in an indescribable yet terrifying pressure that far surpassed that of ancient magical beasts instantly erupted from his body. The Jacques leader only felt his momentum stagnate. Even with his 8-step cultivation, he actually couldn't continue his attack at this moment, and instead took a few steps back in horror. The 6 Jacques leaders who rushed up with him, and had just caught up with his footsteps, all felt their bodies go limp. At this moment, a black figure appeared behind them, and a black radiance, like the scythe of the Grim Reaper, easily cut off their lives. It was precisely Kerr, who had previously concealed herself in the air, making her move. Long Houchin's body underwent rapid changes. The brilliant holy armor turned completely purple, and not only that, but the armor itself was also undergoing earth-shattering changes. The originally very simple plate armor became gorgeous. On both sides of the shoulders, there were 2 bulges that looked like dragon heads, and the armor on the back flipped up like scales, turning into layers and layers. Spikes continuously protruded from each of Long Houchen's joints, and the thickness of the armor at least doubled. The magnificent patterns on the armor had never been seen before, and were definitely not the totems of the High Elves or any other ancient races. The most striking feature was on Long Houchen's chest. 9 purple light patterns extended from the bottom to the top and covered his shoulders, chest, and most of his body. At the end of the 9 light patterns, it could be vaguely seen that there were 9 balls of purple light that looked like 9 faces, emitting a demonic and tyrannical aura. The purplish gold light patterns on Long Houchen's forehead became extremely bright, and his black hair turned completely purple. His originally handsome face lost some of the pure aura of light, and instead gained some demonic and condescending aura. Even the divine sword in his hand, the aria of the goddess of light, was covered with a layer of purple. Fusion. Yes, it was the fusion of Long Houchen and Hao Yue. However, compared to before, the fusion this time was obviously earth-shattering. If their fusion in the past was only a semi-finished product and could only increase Long Houchen's strength to a certain extent, the fusion this time was a complete product. The aura emitted by Long Houchen was clearly much stronger than before. His armor had turned purple, but the spiritual energy emitted from his body was still golden. The noble and magnificent purplish gold color became the color of spiritual energy that Long Houchen was currently emitting. It was not just his body that had changed. The aria of the goddess of light in his hand had also changed. Wasn't the one who had entered the divine sword Yuting? Spirit burning. This ability belonged to both Long Houchen and Yuting. It was a powerful ability that came from the combination of the spiritual stove, fusion, and Long Houchen's divine-favored constitution. Yuting's spirit burning was used on equipment, while Long Houchen's spirit burning was used on himself. At this moment, the moment Yuting flew into the aria of the goddess of light, the divine sword's own power was finally awakened. It would not be like the light retribution that had been unable to withstand Yuting's spirit burning. A swift and fierce sword intent burst forth from Long Houchen's body, as if it could split the heavens and the earth. Then, a dazzling purplish gold flame instantly rose from Long Houchen's body. At this moment, Long Houchen finally displayed his strongest fighting state on the battlefield. After fusing with Hao Yue, he and Yuting had both used spirit burning. Not to mention the enemy. Even his companions felt a sense of fear at this moment, because they could no longer feel the extent of Long Houchen's strength at this moment. His 4 wings, which had been dyed purplish gold by the purple light, suddenly flapped, and Long Houchen brazenly pounced towards the Jacques leader like a purple meteor. In the previous series of probing, he discovered that the Jacques leader's cultivation was still a bit lower than that of the young moon devil he had faced before. When he used his strongest state with the help of his companions, he would really have a chance to kill him. Boom! For the first time, a real collision occurred between Long Houchen and the Jacques leader. The aria of the goddess of light fiercely struck the pitch-black spear in the hands of the Jacques leader. Both sides bounced back at the same time, and unexpectedly, no one gained the upper hand. In other words, Long Houchen's current attack power and physical strength had already been raised to the level of the 8th grade Jacques leader. The Jacques leader looked down at his spear, and was shocked to find that the thickest part of the center of the spear had been split in half. What shocked him even more was that a deep wound had appeared from his right shoulder all the way to his left rib. The scales had rolled back and had already injured his flesh. There was also an extremely strange energy pouring into it. No matter how much he urged his spiritual power, he couldn't dispel it. That wasn't just simple light spiritual power, but also a kind of terrifying aura full of destruction and annihilation. Of course, it wasn't the heavy sword in Long Houchen's hand that injured the Jacques leader, but the sword intent of the aria of the goddess of light, which was a mixture of Long Houchen's and Hao Yue's sword intent. When the godly sword once again had its own sword spirit, its power had brazenly risen from the legendary level to the epic level. An epic level equipment could undoubtedly change a war. If Long Houchen hadn't been in the state of fusion with Hao Yue, even if Yuting had fused with the aria of the goddess of light, he wouldn't have had the ability to use it. Go to hell, Long Houchin shouted, turning complicated into simple, and stepped out in the void. Azura Chop. The misty purple gold color rippled in the sky like a strange light that distorted the space. The rich purple gold color also seemed to swallow everything around it at that moment. Boom! Although the Jacques leader had tried his best to resist, the aria of the goddess of light, which had been upgraded to the epic level, was really too terrifying. That tyrannical destructive power, the condensed sword intent that seemed to be able to split the heavens and the earth, almost instantly destroyed his weapon, and also sent his body flying. At the critical moment, the Jacques leader only had time to tilt his head slightly, avoiding the most vital part of his head. However, half of his body was still sent flying by the sword. The entire left side of his body, including his shoulders, arms, ribs, and the two hooves on his right were all sent flying by the purple gold slash. At this moment, a huge metal ball also appeared out of nowhere, perfectly intercepting the Jacques leader's body in the air. Crushing, absorbing, and a triple explosion erupted wildly. The pitiful Jacques leader of the 8th grade was actually blasted into pieces just like that, with not even his bones remaining. However, after this slash, Long Houchin could no longer maintain his previous state. His body swayed, and Hao Yue's huge body had already separated. His face was pale, and he supported Hao Yue while gasping for breath. Long Houchin, who had entered his strongest state, had even crossed the threshold of the 8th grade. However, he could only maintain this state for a few seconds. At this moment, he had sunk into a deep state of weakness, especially after using the spirit burning technique. Even though he had cultivated for a long time and experienced the changes of the spirit burning technique, he still needed at least 3 or 4 days to fully recover. Yu Ting had already separated from the aria of the goddess of light. The purple gold color on the divine sword had already disappeared, and Yu Ting also looked very dispirited. She directly merged into Long Houchin's body and disappeared. At this moment, the General Class Monster Hunt 64 members did not attack again, but quickly gathered together. Immediately after, a dazzling layer of reddish gold light enveloped them all. Even Hao Yue hurriedly curled up his body, keeping himself within the range of this 5-meter diameter light cover. The others even had to sit on him to not be abandoned by this reddish gold light. Han Yu's spiritual stove of light's protection of light was activated. Rich elements of various attributes were injected into everyone's body at an astonishing speed, rapidly recovering their own consumption. That carefree feeling made everyone heave a huge sigh of relief. This spiritual stove of light's protection of light was really too useful. Bathed in the reddish gold light, apart from the weakened Long Houchin, everyone's spiritual energy was restored to its peak state in a very short period of time. Even the fatigue of their bodies was greatly reduced. On the other side, although it was still very difficult for the King-class monster hunters to resist, they were temporarily not in danger of being defeated, especially after the Jacques leader was killed. The Jacques demons were already panicking. They were no longer able to calmly launch their attacks. Even the remaining 8th grade Jacques leader, after seeing his comrade killed, was not angry, but afraid. It was too fast. From a moment the Jacques leader rushed over to the moment of his death, the whole process only took a few minutes. If the opponent could kill an 8th grade Jacques leader, naturally he could kill a second one. In his opinion, the humans who came later were obviously stronger than the ones who came earlier. After recovering their spiritual energy, Hao Yue and Lin Xian rushed out. Hao Yue was not in the weakened state Long Houchin had been after burning his spirit. Moreover, with its evolution, its recovery ability seemed to have greatly increased. At least until now, Long Houchin had not seen to what extent Hao Yue's limits were. During the previous fusion process, he only felt that his body had reached its limit and could no longer maintain the state of fusion with Hao Yue. Hao Yue and Lin Xian rushed out, naturally to plunder the magic crystals. Lin Xian thought that his speed was very fast, but compared to Hao Yue, he was just trash. Hao Yue's movements were very simple. He rushed over, stepped on the Jacques demon's corpse, crushed it, opened his mouth, and sucked a magic crystal into his stomach. Although Lin Xian also collected the corpse, his speed was actually not as fast as Hao Yue's. However, Hao Yue was still very kind. At least he left the 8th grade Jacques leader's magic crystal to Lin Xian. Whether it was for the team's own use or to exchange it for merit points, it was their biggest gain after entering the demons this time. The strong performance of the General Tier Monster Hunt 64 made the scattered Jacques demons not dare to look back. The hundreds of corpses on the ground were quickly plundered by the joint efforts of Lin Xian and Hao Yue. As for the other side of the battlefield, the recovered Sima Xian, Wang Yuan, Han Yu, and Kai Er rushed over to assist the King Tier monster hunters. Although they could not kill another Jacques leader, the other party had already lost their fighting spirit and quickly retreated in defeat. The battle was finally over. The King Tier monster hunters in the distance were much more exhausted than Long Haochen and the others. Even if they did not have the strength to thank Long Haochen and the others, they all collapsed on the ground, unable to move. Long Haochen sat cross-legged on the ground, summarizing the process of the previous battle. He secretly sighed in his heart. The strength of himself and his companions had increased. In the past, when facing 8th grade enemies, they had no other choice but to use the conjoined spirit-increasing pill. But this time, they were able to openly kill it in a head-on manner. Even compared to the time when they were dealing with the Zombie King, it was much easier. Perhaps, even if he did not use his strongest state, with the cooperation of his companions, he could still kill that guy. Who would have thought that after Yu Ting had fused the aria of the Goddess of Light, the might of this godly sword would be so terrifying? Although Long Haochen had only experienced the might of an epic-grade equipment for a moment, it was deeply imprinted in his mind. Even a Type 8 powerhouse could not withstand a full blow from him. If not for the tyrannical strength of the aria of the Goddess of Light, even if he was in his strongest state, he would not have been able to directly injure his opponent. At the same time, he also felt that for a weapon at the level of the aria of the Goddess of Light, it was no longer constrained by the addition of skills. It was completely dependent on its own strength. That kind of indestructible sword intent, even if one blocked its main body, would still be injured by the sword intent. Type 8. When could he truly become a Type 8 powerhouse? Long Haochen quietly took out the spiritual energy detection gem from the eternal melody and slowly infused it with spiritual energy. A number appeared that made him pleasantly surprised. 9,782. Ah, it's already over 9,700? No wonder Hao Yue and I were able to break through to the Type 8 after fusing and using the spirit burning ability. So my cultivation is already nearing the Type 7 level. Long Haochen had not checked his spiritual energy for a long time, and when he did, he was pleasantly surprised. The speed at which he cultivated as an oracle allowed him to feel the benefits. This time, the reason why he had chosen to complete all the missions was very simple, and that was to help Kai Er awaken as an oracle. Without question, as the reincarnation saintess, she could only awaken as an oracle on the battlefield. This was a secret room. It was not large, only about 10 square meters or so. However, upon closer inspection, one would discover that the ceiling, the walls, and the floor were all made of pitch-black crystals. More accurately, this secret room was carved out of a huge black crystal. In the center of the secret room, there was a faint purple light. Upon closer inspection, one would be able to tell that it was coming from a person's body. The gentle purple light continued to spread and retract. Suddenly, the purple light solidified. 2 streaks of light, which seemed almost tangible, glowed brightly in the darkness of the room. It was a pair of eyes that seemed capable of piercing through the heavens and the earth. When the pair of eyes shone on the black crystal in front of him, a series of popping sounds could be heard. His slender body floated into the air, his legs stretched out. Under the cover of the purple light, one could faintly make out his slightly pale, yet extremely handsome face. However, at this moment, his face was filled with astonishment. Is this its aura? Feng Xiu muttered to himself, a sharp glint flashing across his eyes. Huang Shua, your subordinate is here. A deep, resonant voice replied from outside. Demon Emperor Feng Xiu said coldly, pass down my orders. Send 10 teams of demon hunters to search the area north of the central province. Focus on the Jacques province. If you encounter any magical beast with 3 or more heads, kill them and bring their corpses back to me. Yes, Your Majesty. Do you have any other orders? Feng Xiu thought for a moment and said, ask the star demon to come see me. Yes. In less than a quarter of an hour, soft footsteps sounded, and an orange-red figure walked over quickly until he was about 10 meters away from Yan Fengxiu. He bowed slightly and said, Big brother. His voice was very soft and pleasant to listen to. It even sounded a bit charming, but also somewhat illusory. This was a man whose entire body was emitting an orange-red luster. His figure was similar to that of Demon Emperor Feng Xiu, but a little more slender. His handsome face was comparable to that of the moon demon Agars. However, his face was a little pale, giving off a slightly weak feeling. His orange-red eyes seemed to carry a layer of hazy mist. His smooth, orange-red hair flowed down from the back of his head, like an orange-red waterfall that extended to his calves. The most peculiar thing was that there was an orange-red 6-pointed star imprint on his forehead. If Lin Xin saw his hair, he would definitely jump with envy. Vashik, how is your body recovering? Feng Xiu asked in a gentle voice. Obviously, he was very friendly to this orange-red man. If someone underestimated this orange-red man because of his weak appearance, then they would definitely be the unluckiest existence in the world. This was because this seemingly weak, handsome, and even pitiful person was known as the demon's prophet, the great prophet, the star demon Vashik. He was ranked 3rd among the 72 demon god pillars. From a human's point of view, the star demon Vashik was the #1 magician among the demons. He was one of the few demon gods among the 72 demon god pillars who purely used magic, but his strength was unquestionable. In a sense, his position among the demons was even more important than that of the moon demon Agars. Even the demon emperor had to be careful when facing his great prophecy spell. However, the star demon Vashik rarely appeared on the battlefield. He was the brain of the demons, or rather, the brain of the demon emperor. There were only a few demons who could call the demon emperor elder brother, and in the heart of the demon emperor Feng Xiu, there were only 2 brothers, Agars and Vashik. About 80% recovered. The star demon Vashik's voice was still so gentle and pleasant. The demon emperor's expression was slightly solemn. You should have felt it just now. Your perception isn't as far away as mine, but it should be clearer. Is it really him? The star demon's face seemed to become even paler, but he nodded without hesitation. Feng Xiu narrowed his eyes, as if there was a flash of purple lightning in his eyes. He actually came. But shouldn't he be restricted by the laws of space and unable to leave that place? The star demon sighed softly and shook his head. The long orange hair behind him swayed gently. I don't know what's going on either, but I can be sure that the current him is far from what he was before. Otherwise, I'm afraid he would have come looking for us. Also, I can be sure that he knows that we are in this world. Big brother, destroying him is our current top priority. At this time, the demon emperor seemed a little hesitant because of the star demon's words. He subconsciously clenched his fists and muttered to himself, how can I not believe the prophecy you made at the cost of your life? It's just that it seems to be able to hide from my precise detection. It only reveals its brilliance once in a while. How are we going to find it? The star demon said calmly. The sun-like meteorite descends to the world, bringing with it a thick purple intent. When the sunlight shines in the light of God, the darkness will gradually be dispelled. The dawn shines in the northwest. The ruler of the purple intent has returned. Whether the 72 cages can suppress the light of the sun and destroy the purple intent in its infancy will determine the fate of the cages and the world. This was the prophecy that the star demon obtained at the cost of his own life. The star demon continued. According to the prophecy, there are 2 things that will bring us destruction. The purple intent is naturally him, but we still don't know who the sun-like meteorite is. It's very likely that it's a rising human. We must pay more attention to the human situation. The young human that Abao met in Fantasy Paradise last time was very suspicious. If there's a chance, we must kill him. Also, according to the prophecy, this human might be related to him, and their relationship is very close. If that's the case, it'll be easier to lock onto our target. Hearing this, the Demon Emperor suddenly froze. Him? Could be him? Big brother, did you think of something? The Star Demon looked at the Demon Emperor in surprise. The Demon Emperor shook his head lightly, a trace of contemplation in his eyes. Chapter 135. Temple League, Sacred City, Great Auction House. An extremely beautiful young girl quietly sat in the backyard of the Sacred Alliance Great Auction House. She wore a long white dress that perfectly showed off her alluring figure. Her eyebrows were like a painting, full of gentleness and an indescribable sense of purity. She just sat there quietly like a fairy. The beautiful scenery in the surrounding courtyard seemed to be colored by her. A young girl wearing a red dress quietly walked behind her and suddenly yelled, "What are you thinking about, little white flower?" The white-dressed young girl was startled. She suddenly sat up straight and turned her head to see the red-dressed young girl. She immediately said angrily, "Big Sister Endless, you only know how to scare people. I already said not to call me little white flower. That annoying guy, humph." This young girl was the young master of the Sacred Alliance Great Auction House, Feng Ling Air. As for the one who startled her, it was naturally the Sacred Alliance Great Auction House's chief auctioneer, the amorous Endless Night. Endless Night giggled. "Yeah, I shouldn't call you little white flower. I should call you little chili pepper. You're always so fierce to me. If I don't scold you, I won't be satisfied. Only that idiot would come here every day. However, recently, you've been satisfied with your wishes. I've left and won't bother you anymore." Ever since Lin Xin brought Sima Xian to meet Feng Ling Air, Sima Xian fully displayed his love at first sight. Every day, without affecting his cultivation, he would definitely come to the Sacred Alliance Great Auction House to report. Endless Night helped him a lot. At least every time he could see Feng Ling Air. Then, as Endless Night had said, he was directly scolded away. As for the nickname Little White Flower, of course, it was because Lin Xin, his bad friend, sold out the bald cleric. It also became a joke for Endless Night to make fun of Feng Ling Air. Of course, Lin Xin also secretly helped Sima Xian a lot. At least, every time Sima Xian came, he would bring some good food for Feng Ling Air. This hobby was naturally secretly told to them by Endless Night. The night before he left, Sima Xian brought a bunch of good food for Feng Ling Air. Even now, Feng Ling could still remember the scene. That guy was really strong. He must have brought at least 100 kilograms of food, and it covered his entire body. When she scolded him, he would just laugh foolishly and never talk back. Then, he stopped there and cursed until he was tired of cursing. Only then did he leave. Take a break and drink some water. You'll get a sore throat if you keep talking loudly. From tomorrow onwards, I won't be able to come and see you. He didn't know how long it would take this time. Take care of yourself. I know it's impossible for you to fall in love with me, but it doesn't matter. At least you let me experience the feeling of being in love. You can treat me as a crush or a one-sided love, but at least you can't stop me from liking you in my heart. Thank you so much. I've been very happy during this period of time. I didn't know that looking forward to seeing someone every day would make me so happy. I will be satisfied if I can hear your voice every day. Actually, you're right. I'm not good enough for you, and I'm a demon hunter. Every time they carried out a mission, their lives were in danger. How can a man like me give you a sense of security? I understand all of this, but I can't help but like you in my heart. Don't push me. Let me finish talking, and I'll leave. Maybe this will be our last goodbye. I don't know if I can come back alive. My only wish is to say everything in my heart and leave without any regrets. I want to kill the enemy without any distractions. Is that okay? Don't throw away these snacks, okay? At least don't waste them. Actually, Lin Xin was the one who told me that you like to eat snacks. Am I stupid? Look, I'm sweating talking to you. I've probably said more words today than I have in the past. You, you could just treat me as a passerby in your life. Once you've passed, you'll forget about me. I hope that my pestering didn't cause you any trouble during this period of time. I just hope that you'll be well. Thank you for letting me say so much. I'm leaving. Although you're very fierce to me, I know that it's all because of me. In my heart, you'll always be a pure and flawless little white flower. Goodbye. I love you. Even though so many days had passed, Fong Linger could still clearly remember that scene. Sima Xian walked out of the courtyard door and suddenly poked his head back. After shouting those 3 words, he turned his head and ran. That appearance of running away, filled with a strong sense of satisfaction, made Fong Linger's heart throb for the first time. Hey, what are you thinking about? You're thinking so much that you're in a daze. You can't really have fallen for that bald cleric, right? Endless Night said. Who likes him? Fong Linger said in a bad mood. Endless Night giggled and said, That's right. He's not good enough for our little princess. The number of people chasing after you can almost line up from here to the city gate. He's not gentle at all, nor does he know how to curry favor. Every day, I came up with the idea to bring some good food. That's right. Where's the dried fish he brought before he left? If you don't eat it, don't waste it. Give it all to me, just like before. Hee, I'll help you eat it. Fong Linger rolled her eyes. Sister Endless, you're too bad. It's clearly all the food you want to eat, but you're blaming it on me. Don't tell me that if you want it, no one will buy it for you? Endless Night suddenly let out a light sigh and said, Aren't you very curious why I helped that bald cleric get close to you? In the past, I was the one who helped you chase away those wild bees and lascivious butterflies. Fong Linger subconsciously nodded her head. Endless Night said, Because I'm very interested in that group leader of theirs. I really want to see him again and interact with him. That's why I try to get in touch with the people around him and understand him. He inherited a great-grandfather's god sword. I really want to know what kind of person he is. But whether it's Lin Xen or that bald cleric, neither of them are willing to say much. They only say that their group leader is always in seclusion. I've never succeeded. Linger, big sister used you. Do you blame me? However, Lin Xen and that Sima Xian aren't bad people. Being normal friends is also pretty good. Fong Linger said, If he's in seclusion, can't you just go and find him? Why do you have to drag me into this? Her words carried a bit of anger, as well as a bit of humiliation. Endless Night laughed bitterly. Because my confidence has disappeared, I still clearly remember the scene that day. A man's eyes can actually be so clear. You can't be moved by him, right? Fong Linger cried out in surprise. Endless Night nodded his head without hiding anything and said, I'm moved, but I'm afraid I don't even have a sliver of a chance. Lin Xin told me before that he already has a confidant, which is their vice group leader. Fong Linger said, So what? They're not married. With my big sister Endless 36 methods, wouldn't it be easy to catch them? Endless Night shook his head and said, Impossible. I have a very strong feeling that this man is not someone I can manipulate. Also, I don't really like him. When I say moved, it's more of a kind of curiosity. Also, through this period of contact, you should have also felt that whether it's Lin Xin or Sima Xian, they are both extremely outstanding existences. In the younger generation of the Alliance, they are all peak elites. I don't really understand Sima Xian, but I've known Lin Xin for a long time. His grandfather is the Magic Temple's Vice Temple Master, and he himself is the most outstanding potioneering master of the younger generation. Now, he's even a demon hunter. I've secretly checked his cultivation, and he's actually already reached the 6th stage. But just like that, I don't know if you've noticed, but every time I mention their group leader, Long Houchin, their expressions immediately change. Reverence. That's right, reverence. They haven't been demon hunters for long. In other words, Long Houchin's age should be around the same as theirs. But it's this kind of youth that can actually make 2 of the Alliance's younger generation elites feel reverence. It can be imagined just how outstanding that Long Houchin is. So, my curiosity towards him has grown stronger and stronger. I won't hide it from you. Every time I think back to the look in his eyes when he raised the godly sword, I always feel a sense of inferiority, as if I'm not worthy of him. After saying so much in one breath, Fong Linger who was listening, was already dumbfounded. She was the clearest on how arrogant Endless Night was, but it was this arrogant Endless Night that actually felt inferior towards a man. How inconceivable was this? Sister Endless, do you think he'll be able to come back alive? Feng Ling asked in a low voice. Endless Night lightly shook his head. I don't know either. Feng Ling's elegant eyebrows slightly knitted, saying, Didn't you say they were very strong? And that mysterious group leader. That person really doesn't seem to be ordinary. Endless Night said, Being strong is a double-edged sword. It's because of their strength that the quests they choose to accept are definitely not ordinary. Lin Xin is only a bit over 20. If the others are around his age, then their entire team shouldn't even be 25. But I heard Lin Xin say that they're already commander-level monster hunters. This means that their overall strength surpasses the 6th stage, and the quests they accept are also commander-level. She didn't know why, but after hearing Endless Night's words, Feng Ling suddenly felt a bit uncomfortable in her heart. She blurted out, Sister Endless, don't eat the things that guy gave me anymore. I'll keep them for myself. Endless Night looked at her with a strange expression. Feng Ling acted as if she didn't see it. I hope they can all come back alive. The battlefield had already been cleaned up. After a short rest, the two teams of monster hunters had recovered a bit, especially that king-level monster hunters. They cut a sorry figure. Hello, I am the king-level number 17 monster hunters group leader, Guardian Knight Sky Ching. Thank you for your assistance. The Mithril Foundation Knight had already taken off his helmet, revealing a slightly weathered but extremely resolute face. He looked to be around 35 or 36 years old. His palms were wide and strong. Long Haochen extended his hand and shook his hand, but used honorifics. Hello, we are Commander Level Monster Hunt 64. I am the group leader Long Haochen. It's my honor to fight alongside you. Commander level? Sky Ching's expression went blank. Brother, you're not joking, right? In the time it took to say this, Long Haochen had already lifted his hand and lifted the cloak covering his head. He also pulled down the yellow sand veil covering his face. Looking at his handsome, young face, Sky Ching suddenly became speechless. Not only him, but his companions in the group also felt the same way. Just now, when Long Haochen had displayed his powerful strength, they were filled with extreme shock. The only thing they didn't understand was why Long Haochen didn't wear the Mithril Foundation battle armor. With his strength of severely injuring a Jacques demon of the 8th rank with 2 swords, becoming a Mithril Foundation Knight shouldn't be a problem, unless he had a better choice of equipment. It's really too unexpected. You're actually so young. But in any case, on behalf of me and my companions, I sincerely thank you for your timely rescue. If you hadn't appeared in time, I'm afraid we wouldn't have been able to escape today. Long Haochen asked with slight doubt. Senior, with the strength of your group, it shouldn't have been difficult to deal with 2 Jacques demons. How could... The promotion of Monster Hunter for the Commander tier to the King tier was definitely a qualitative leap. Not only did they have to pay 1,000,000 merit points, they also had to raise their cultivation to the 7th rank. Being willing to pay so many merit points undoubtedly proved that this group of monster hunters already had powerful enough equipment. Although they were only at the 7th rank, it wasn't difficult for a group of monster hunters made up of experts of the 7th rank to deal with 2 demons of the 8th rank, especially since the Jacques demons didn't have the inheritance of the demon god. As for those low-level Jacques demons, it was needless to say, as could be seen from Long Haochen and the others' previous battle. Sky Ching smiled bitterly and said, Don't mention it. This time was really unlucky. Our original mission was to enter Jacques City to kill the 2 Jacques leaders of the 8th rank. But who knew that when we were ambushing the Jacques leaders, we would be ambushed by a group of demons. Although we severely injured the opponents, we also suffered a great loss. Out of 6 people, 4 were injured, and our spiritual power was also greatly consumed. Although we recovered a little with the help of medicine, the Jacques demons surrounded us at this time. It wasn't easy to break out of the encirclement, but because of the annoying spore demons in the sky, we couldn't shake them off. You know what happened next? Demon hunters? What's that? Long Haochen asked doubtfully. Sky Ching said, to be precise, the demon hunters are somewhat similar to our monster hunters. It is a new organization that the demons specifically established to deal with us. It has been established for about a year. As the strength of the Alliance grows stronger, the battle strength of our monster hunters has always been increasing. The demons are becoming more and more aware of our destructive power against the demons. They have no choice but to come up with some measures to deal with it. The demon hunter extermination was like this. The so-called demon hunter extermination was formed by selecting some elites from the devil race. Each demon hunter team is composed of 10 members, and the leader is always a powerhouse of the 8th rank. Some of the teams with the leaders of the defiant demon dragon clan, moon devils, and star demons are the most powerful. The overall strength of the team members is above the 7th rank. There are even a few particularly powerful demon hunters made up of powerhouses of the 9th rank demons. We are currently investigating the specific classification of the demon hunters. The reason why our monster hunters dare to carry out various tasks in the territory of the demons is mainly because of the loose internal structure of the demons. These demon hunters can't enter the territory of our alliance. They don't dare. After all, the appearance and aura of the demons are very different from us humans, and the number of demons that are completely in human form is relatively small. They don't dare to take the risk. Therefore, these demon hunters focus all their energy on dealing with us in the territory of the demons. In this more than a year, at least 10 monster hunters have fallen in their hands. This time, we almost suffered a big loss. Long Haochen took a deep breath and said, "Do you know how many demon hunters there are now?" Sky Ching said, "According to the information we received when the demon hunters were first established, there were about 100 teams under the direct command of the Demon Emperor. They only listened to the orders of the Demon Emperor. From now on, you must be careful when you move around the demons. These demon hunters are very difficult to deal with. Some of them even have some powerful equipment on them. Although they are modeled after us monster hunters, the demons have their natural advantages. High-level demons don't need too much training to have the strength of the 7th rank or above." Long Haochen said, "In that case, we must leave this place as soon as possible. Those Jacques demons that fled will definitely leak our whereabouts to the demon hunters." Sky Ching nodded and said, "Exactly. How about this? You come with us to the nearest regiment headquarters." Long Haochen hesitated for a moment and said, "This is against the rules. At our level, we don't have the right to enter the regiment headquarters." The so-called regiment headquarters were the secret strongholds of the monster hunters in the territory of the demons. They were specially provided for king tier and above monster hunters to rest and resupply. It wasn't that they discriminated against low-level monster hunters, but because low-level monster hunters themselves didn't have to carry out tasks that were too difficult. However, the establishment of these regiment headquarters in the demons consumed too much manpower, material resources, and resources of the Alliance. Therefore, it was natural that they were given priority to the powerful monster hunters. For example, the fallen demon god monster hunters hidden in the heart of the demon capital was hidden in one of the regiment headquarters in the heart of the demon capital. The demon emperor had ordered a thorough investigation of the heart of the city, but in the end, they still couldn't dig out this regiment headquarters. From this, it could be seen how powerful the role of the regiment headquarters was. Sky Ching patted Long Haochen's shoulder and said, "Don't say such polite words. Rules are dead, people are alive. Is a regiment headquarters really not given to general tier and commander tier monster hunters? As long as there is a king tier or above team leading it, there won't be a problem. Let's go. The nearest regiment headquarters is in the city of Great Jacques. Aren't they chasing us? In that case, we'll just do the opposite and go back. I really don't want to leave just like that. After we rest and reorganize, we will definitely turn Great Jacques upside down." As he spoke, the eyes of this powerful mithril foundation knight were already shining brightly. To be able to become a king-tier demon hunter, which one of them didn't go through continuous battles with the demons? Without a strong temperament, how could they advance all the way? Who knew how many strong demons' blood they had stained their hands? Heavenly Crystal and his team were obviously very familiar with the surrounding terrain. Under his lead, the two demon hunt squads took a long detour, and it took them an entire day to reach the city of Great Jacques while advancing at full speed. Unlike Long Houchin and the others who disguised themselves as moon devils, the 17th King tier monster hunters also had their own methods. They used something called the illusion mimicry gem to transform themselves into the appearance of a Jacques demon. This way, they surrounded Long Houchin and the others and entered Great Jacques City together. Great Jacques City seemed to be a bit chaotic. The city's defenses were not strict. At least, they didn't search Long Houchin and the others before letting them enter the city. Sky Ching told Long Houchin that the illusion mimicry gem could transform into stored illusions with the support of spiritual power. Storing illusions was a more troublesome process. However, in the territory of the demons, it was a necessary treasure for some powerful monster hunters. Long Houchin and the others had just entered the commander tier and had not yet come into contact with this kind of thing. Although Great Jacques City was the capital of the Jacques province, it was not very big. Like most of the cities of the demons, it was also a bit dilapidated. Sky Ching brought Long Houchin and the others to a restaurant opened by humans and went directly into the kitchen. The following process was really an eye-opener for Long Houchin and the others. The kitchen in the back moved horizontally, revealing the entrance to the cave. The 13 people filed in, and the kitchen above was completely closed. What surprised Long Houchin even more was that when the entrance above was closed, he couldn't feel anything outside, even with his powerful perception. In other words, the entrance to the cave had the ability to completely block the outside world. When they first entered the cave, Long Houchin saw that when the kitchen moved horizontally, the ground at the entrance was more than a meter thick. There was no doubt that there were precious special metals integrated into it, and there may even be magic arrays engraved. It should be known that Great Jacques City was not an important town in the demons, but such a large investment was needed. It was no wonder that the monster hunters could thrive in the territory of the demons. On both sides of the tunnel, there were special crystals that could self-illuminate, and there was obviously a very good ventilation system here, so it was not stuffy at all. They went all the way down, a full 30 meters underground before it became parallel to the front. After another 20 meters, small rooms began to appear on both sides. The layout of each room was very simple, with a bed, a table, and chair. There were about 20 rooms in the whole tunnel, enough to accommodate 3 monster hunters to rest here. But at this time, there was no one. There was also a special warehouse inside, which stored a lot of food and clean water. Let's take a break. Brother Long, shall we talk for a while? Sky Ching said to Long Houchin. Long Houchin nodded. The two entered a room inside. The others naturally looked for their own rooms to rest. Sky Ching asked Long Houchin to sit down and said, "At present, there are only our 2 monster hunters here, so I won't say any words of thanks. This kindness will always be remembered in the hearts of the 17th King class monster hunters. You also don't need to call me senior. We can directly call each other by name." Sky Ching's character was very straightforward, but he didn't ask Long Houchin about their age or the secret technique they used to kill the rank 8 Jacques leader. Every monster hunters had their own secrets. Even if they were fellow soldiers, it was not good to ask others about their secrets. Okay, Long Houchin also agreed. Sky Ching said in a deep voice, "This time, we can be said to have suffered a big loss and almost lost our lives here. I'm very unwilling. However, this time, the Jacques clan was also hit hard by you, especially the death of a Jacques leader, which has a great impact on Great Jacques City. This will inevitably lead to changes in the entire Jacques clan. I estimate that there will be more demon hunter removers coming here to look for traces of us. I have an idea. Let's discuss it and see if it is feasible." Long Houchin said, "Big brother Sky Ching, please say it." Sky Ching said, "What mission are you going to carry out in this demons? My plan may require a considerable amount of time to complete. If your mission is urgent, you can rest here and then leave. There are 2 passages from our regiment that lead to the outside of the city. You can directly leave the city." Long Houchin said, "We don't have any urgent mission. This time, we received some killing missions and entered the territory of the demons. Speaking of which, we still have to thank you. One of our missions was to kill 100 Jacques demons, which was completed ahead of time. Sky Ching said, "In this case, there is no problem. Didn't those demon hunter removers want to get rid of us monster hunters? Moreover, they have already brought us so many losses. If we don't retaliate, wouldn't the demons be arrogant? Since the demon hunter removers will definitely come here to investigate our traces, then we—" As he said this, his eyes were already full of fierceness. His right hand slashed horizontally in the air, bringing with it an ear-piercing sound. "Ambush the demon hunter removers?" Long Haochen asked. Sky Ching nodded. "There are spies from our regiment in Great Jacques City. However, before the ambush, we must lie low for a period of time, at least half a month, in order to numb the demon hunter removers. If I remember correctly, many of your commander-level hunting missions are aimed at rank 7 demons. The demon hunter removers are mainly composed of rank 7 demons ranked in the top 10 demons. In this way, it is equivalent to you carrying out a mission. How about it? Are you interested? It is very dangerous. Think carefully before you answer me. Once it is confirmed, we will start to arrange the plan." Long Haochen said without hesitation, "Good. We will cooperate with you." Sky Ching looked at him with some surprise. Long Haochen smiled slightly and said, "To tell you the truth, this time we have accepted 16 slaughter missions for the demons. Facing the demon hunter removers here is better than sneaking into the heart of the demon city to kill them. After all, the moon devils, star demons, and the demons are only active in the heart of the city. Our target is also them. If we can complete it here, naturally, it will be the best. Moreover, there's also your cooperation." Tianqing was stunned as he looked at him. 16 slaughter missions? You really dare to accept them? In the absence of the regiment support, do you plan to live in the demons for a long time? Sure enough, the more daring you are, the more productive you are. No wonder you are so strong at such a young age. Long Haochen laughed and said, "Since we're going to ambush the demon hunter removers, then reconnaissance is very important. Can the spies here complete it?" Sky Ching nodded and said, "You can rest assured about this. Although the establishment of the regiment is a huge investment, it is also a huge help to us. The spies here are all humans who have integrated into the demon society. Moreover, they're made up of many people. Every once in a while, there will be news sent to us, enough for us to make a judgment. Of course, it is impossible for us to ambush all the demon hunter removers, so we must lie low for a period of time. When the number of demon hunter removers here is reduced to a certain extent, then we will look for an opportunity. You can rest assured that with this lesson, we will be more careful and never give them another chance." After the plan was settled, the two teams of monster hunters stayed here to treat their injuries and restore their bodies. After Long Haochen's strong burst, he was weak for a full 7 days before he fully recovered. It can be seen that the real fusion with Hao Yue stimulated his potential. But this kind of overdraft stimulation not only cannot last long, but also has huge side effects. Yiting was also weak for a long time and only recovered on the 5th day or so. But she also passed on a message to Long Haochen. The divine sword aria of the goddess of light could completely bear her fusion, and even had a kind of frightening situation of absorbing her to become a fixed sword spirit, which made Yiting somewhat afraid. If she was not strong enough, perhaps she would not be able to separate herself. And if she really completely fused with the aria of the goddess of light, then it would undoubtedly reproduce the true appearance of the divine sword. But in that case, Long Haochen would also lose Yiting. At the same time, with his current strength, he was still far from being able to control the true aria of the goddess of light. Fortunately, Yiting was not an ordinary light elemental spirit. She had already gone through 3 evolutions and had fused with the saint's spiritual stove. Her own wisdom and thinking ability had been greatly improved. As long as she did not want to, even the aria of the goddess of light could not forcibly absorb her as a sword spirit. In these 7 days, there was a constant flow of news from outside, and Tianqing did not hold back to share it with Long Haochen. What made them inexplicably surprised was that Jacques City suddenly became lively. According to the reports of their informants, they found at least 7 or 8 groups similar to the demon hunter demons. With the strength of their 2 groups of monster hunters, dealing with one group of demon hunters was not a problem. If they were to deal with 2 groups, they also had a chance, and the chances of winning were relatively large. But if they were to face 3 groups of demon hunters, especially if they were entangled by the enemy, and the enemy might have reinforcements, they would undoubtedly lose. Long Houchen and the others were fine. In any case, they had the Tower of Eternity as a retreat route, but Tianqing and the others could not. With Long Houchen's current cultivation, even if he had the heart to bring them into the Tower of Eternity, he did not have that kind of ability. What's more, the secret of the Tower of Eternity should not be leaked as much as possible. Therefore, the 2 groups of monster hunters could only continue to rest here and did not dare to easily leave. The Jacques race mobilized a large number of manpower to carry out a carpet search in the city, as if they had gone crazy. It lasted for a full 3 days before they gradually calmed down. Fortunately, the regiment headquarters was extremely secretive, and the camouflage outside was good enough, so they were not discovered. This also made Long Houchen more and more aware of the importance of the regiment headquarters to the monster hunters. Sitting cross-legged on the bed, Long Houchen's whole body was immersed in the sea of light. Since his God-favored physique was awakened, the speed of his cultivation could be described as 1,000 miles a day. In his chest, the golden spiritual aperture was different from before. At this time, the spiritual aperture was about the size of an egg, exuding a soft golden light. Every time Long Houchen breathed, there would be a clear feeling of light elements being inhaled. The liquid spiritual power surrounding the spiritual aperture was like a cluster of stars hovering around the spiritual aperture. The extremely viscous liquid spiritual power did not seem to be moving very fast, but it was so pure and condensed. Long Houchen's cultivation was already very close to the 7th rank, but even an ordinary 7th rank powerhouse would definitely not be able to compete with him in terms of spiritual power consumption. The reason was very simple. Long Houchen's spiritual power was much purer than theirs, and using the same skills, the consumption of spiritual power was naturally much lower. If it was an ordinary light element professional, even if they could refine spiritual power to this degree, their cultivation speed would definitely be greatly affected, and it would be very difficult to improve. But Long Houchen only felt that his spiritual power increasing was as easy as breathing. It must be known that in the past year of seclusion, if he hadn't spent a lot of time leading his companions in the 2nd floor of the Tower of Eternity to practice aerial combat and various combat skills, as well as the new skills he learned from the Alliance after becoming a commander-level monster hunters, his cultivation would have long reached the peak of the 6th rank bottleneck. The reason why Long Houchen did not do so was because of accumulation. After many years of cultivation, Long Houchen found that when his cultivation reached a plateau, the difficulty of breaking through was mainly due to the lack of accumulation. Breaking through in spiritual power not only required understanding and control of spiritual power, but also the corresponding combat experience. After all, spiritual power could only be cycled through continuous use. Therefore, he was not in a hurry to raise his cultivation to the peak of the 6th rank, but continued to accumulate. He believed that this way, when he reached the bottleneck of the 6th rank, breaking through to the 7th rank would be much easier. In his mind, the memories left by his father gradually came back. The change from the 6th rank to the 7th rank is also a leap in quality. Condensing the spiritual aperture at the 6th rank means that a professional has become a powerhouse from an ordinary person. After condensing the spiritual aperture, one can only last for a long time in battle. The spiritual aperture is condensed in the chest. That is also where our spiritual power gathers. But how much spiritual power can we bear? Only 10,000. In other words, when the tolerance of a spiritual aperture reaches its limit, your cultivation can no longer continue to increase. If you forcefully break through this limit, it is very likely that the spiritual aperture will be damaged, bringing about a fatal crisis to yourself. Therefore, the process of advancing from the 6th rank to the 7th rank is no longer a breakthrough, but a creation. How can we continue to increase our strength? One spiritual aperture has already reached its limit, so why don't we open more spiritual apertures? Therefore, there's a way to break through from the 6th rank to the 7th rank. Open the 2nd and 3rd spiritual apertures. This sequence cannot be wrong, otherwise you will not be able to bear it. The 2nd spiritual aperture is located in the lower abdomen, and the 3rd spiritual aperture is located in your brain. When the 2nd spiritual aperture is created, it means that you have broken through to the 7th rank. And when your spiritual power fills the 2nd spiritual aperture, it is time to build the 3rd spiritual aperture. This will also be one of the biggest dangers you will encounter in the process of cultivation. So you must be careful and remember not to advance rashly. I cannot tell you the specific method of building the spiritual aperture. You will have to rely on yourself to comprehend it. Chapter 136. Recalling his father's teachings, Long Haochen's heart gradually warmed up. Dad, I'm going to break through to the 7th rank. Can you think of it? I'm not even 17 yet. When I break through to the 7th rank, I'll go to the Basilica of the Knights to find you and Mom. That's after I complete the killing mission. After completing the killing mission, I have to take the Mithril Base Knight assessment first. I must appear in front of you wearing the silver Mithril Base armor. Thinking of this, a sense of pride welled up in Long Haochen's heart. Indeed, even he didn't expect that his own cultivation speed could reach the 7th rank so quickly. This was really an incredible speed. Since separating from his parents, Long Haochen's life could be said to be very fulfilling. He trained hard, completed missions with his partners, and had Kai by his side. However, every night, he couldn't help but think of his parents and miss them deeply. His mother's gentleness and love, his father's strictness and strength were all deeply imprinted in his mind. One of the most profound memories of Long Haochen's life was the moment when he and his father were sneak attacked by demons in Odin Town, and his father revealed the throne of God. That scene was also something he could never forget. Although Long Haochen was still very young at that time, he had secretly vowed that one day he must sit on the throne of God like his father. Kai sat opposite Long Haochen. Since entering the demon's territory, the General Class Monster Hunt 64 had lost the relaxation they had in the Alliance and was completely in a state of tension. All the spare time was used for cultivation. The benefits brought to them by a year of retreat were gradually showing. The long-term accumulation made everyone's spiritual power cultivation speed improve a lot. Especially the control of their spiritual apertures was far better than when they just broke through to the 6th rank. During the 1 year of seclusion, Long Haochen had brought his partners to the Tower of Eternity for actual combat, so that everyone could familiarize themselves with the spiritual acupoints through constant battles and feel the changes in the spiritual acupoints. What he did was undoubtedly the right thing to do, because apart from him and Kerr, the other 5 companions' breakthroughs to the 6th order could be said to have received help from illusory paradise. Their foundations were not solid, and after a year of hard work, they could be considered to have truly stabilized their cultivation. In addition, the Tower of Eternity could be said to have brought about the best way for each of their companions to improve. Kai's spiritual power was second only to Long Haochen's, and she had just broken through to 7,000 in the past few days. Most of her friends were also hovering around 6,000. This speed was already very shocking. Apart from Kai, the fastest spiritual power improvement was naturally Long Haochen's 2 retainers. With the help of talent suppression sharing, with their innate internal spiritual power of 80, Han Yu and Sima Xian also improved very quickly. Chuning cultivation was still the slowest, but for some reason, everyone could feel that Chuning temperament was gradually changing. Grand Jacques City. After a few days of turmoil, the capital of the Jacques province gradually returned to peace. However, a few days ago, the blow from the Temple League's monster hunters still dealt a heavy blow to the Jacques race, a race that was not very strong in the first place. Because of their slow reproduction speed, the Jacques race had always been rarely on the battlefield, and the total number of troops was also maintained at a low number. The blow this time could be said to be quite huge, especially the death of a Jacques leader, which was even more damaging to the vitality of the Jacques race. A team of 10 people was proudly entering Grand Jacques City from the East City Gate. Walking at the forefront was a tall man covered in a large orange cloak. This cloak exuded strong spiritual power fluctuations had already made clear his identity. Star demons. The 9 demons following behind him were of different shapes and sizes, but all of them exuded a powerful aura. They strode through the streets of Grand Jacques City with their heads held high, and all the demons and human residents in the city dodged to the side. There was no doubt that this team was a Demon Hunter Extermination Group. The first batch of Demon Hunter Extermination Group was established, and there were a total of 100 groups under the direct leadership of the Demon Emperor. Therefore, to be able to become a member of the Demon Hunter Extermination Group, one could imagine the arrogance in the hearts of these demons. The Demon Emperor's status among the demons was supreme, and the establishment of the Demon Hunter Extermination Group undoubtedly further consolidated his ruling position, but no race dared to raise any objections. And after the Demon Hunter Extermination Group was established, it indeed had an immediate effect. There were already many Temple League monster hunters who had suffered at their hands. There were casualties, and there were even teams that were wiped out. And this powerful force of the Demon Hunter Extermination Group existed specifically to deal with the monster hunters. The 100 Demon Hunter Extermination Groups were also divided into strong and weak, from strong to weak. The 3 strongest Demon Hunter Extermination Groups were all led by the top 36 demon gods, and their members were all Type 9 powerhouses. Therefore, they were also known as the Demon God Group. These were 30 Type 9 powerhouses, and their strength could be imagined. The reason why the Demon Hunter Extermination Group consisted of 10 people was specifically to deal with the 6 monster hunters. Apart from the Demon God Group, next was the Demon King Group. The characteristic of the Demon King Group was very simple. The leader was definitely a Type 9. The Demon King Group had a total of 10 groups. Following them were the Dragon Group, Moon Group, Star Group, and Demon Group. As the name suggested, the leader of the Dragon Group was naturally a heaven-defying demon dragon. The Moon and Star Groups were naturally led by Moon Devils and Star Demons, while the Demon Group was a miscellaneous group. There were 10 Dragon, Moon, and Star Groups, and the rest were all Demon Groups. In terms of strength, apart from the Demon God Group and Demon King Group, the remaining 4 Demon Hunter Extermination Groups were actually not too far apart. However, with the heaven-defying Demon Dragon, Moon Devils, and Star Demons as leaders, the cohesiveness of the groups would be stronger, and their overall strength would be slightly stronger. The Demon Hunter Extermination Group, before them, was undoubtedly the Star Group. Xing Xian had been a little depressed these few days. The Demon Hunter Extermination Group had been established for more than a year, but for some reason, their luck had not been very good. They had never encountered any human monster hunters. As the team leader, Xing Xian was very eager to fight with human monster hunters. After the establishment of the Demon Hunter Extermination Group, they received a comprehensive allocation of resources from the demons. All the human alchemists and craftsmen controlled by the demons were all forging equipment for them. However, the equipment was obviously not given for free. Only by killing members of the monster hunters would they receive more preferential treatment. However, it was not easy to find monster hunters. At least, they had not encountered them yet, so they had not received any rewards. 10 days ago, the Demon Emperor suddenly ordered them to search the area of Jacques Province. They had been searching for 10 days, but not even the shadow of a monster hunter was seen. The rest of the demon hunters had already gone back to report or patrolled in other places. The higher-ups had issued an order to leave 3 groups of demon hunters, including theirs, to continue the search in the vicinity of Grand Jacques City, and it would last for a month. Team leader, this order from above is 2F** head up. Are we patrolling the air? We might as well go to the border to attack the Temple League army, said a very majestic demon behind Xing Xian. This guy was more than 3.5 meters tall, and the widest part of his shoulders was nearly 2 meters wide. His thick arms were like giant pillars. His whole body was covered with long black hair, and he had a full beard on his face. His overall appearance was somewhat human-like, but the fangs in his mouth and the black hair on his body revealed his true identity. One of the strongest races of the demons, the bear demon. The bear Veilfar ranked 6th among the 72 demon god pillars of the demons. He was extremely powerful, and his body was like an iron wall. The bear demon under his banner was the backbone of the demons. If the heaven-defying demon dragon was the king of the demons, the star demons were the brains of the demons, and the moon devils were the souls of the demons, then the bear demon was the barrier of the demons. A solid barrier. Their terrifying strength and defense made them invincible on the battlefield. This was a terrifying race that relied on external spiritual power to cultivate to the 9th rank. Of course, they also had a disadvantage. No matter how powerful the bear demons were, they couldn't fly. Xing Xian snorted coldly. Cut the crap. Just do as the higher-ups say. It's already noon. Let's find a place to eat first. The bear demons smiled and didn't say another word. Their huge bodies stood behind Xing Xian like a barrier. In this team, he and Xing Xian had the highest status. The other members were just ordinary 7th rank. He was at the peak of 7th rank, and Xing Xian was an 8th rank powerhouse. The 8th rank star demons were definitely terrifying existences. The group of 10 demons walked slowly into the city, looking for a place to eat. As demon hunters, they naturally wouldn't pay for their meals. And just the bear demon alone could bankrupt an entire restaurant with his food. As he walked forward, Xing Xian's expression suddenly changed. He stopped in his tracks and abruptly slammed the magic staff in his right hand onto the ground. A layer of intense orange light abruptly spread out with his body as the center. An illusory figure flashed and disappeared in an instant. An ear-piercing, tearing sound erupted from the spreading orange light. Xing Xian grunted and took half a step back. There was already a long wound on his chest. Fortunately, a necklace around his neck emitted a strong black light and protected his vitals. This was only a minor injury. Human assassin. Xing Xian snorted angrily. He raised the staff in his hand again, and the terrifying and sticky dark element rushed towards the figure that had already appeared. Elemental impact. This was the most effective and fastest attack of an 8th rank mage. Mages were indeed most afraid of assassins. However, once their figure was caught or the distance was pulled apart, then the assassin could only be a target for the mage. Of course, Xing Xian didn't need to pull apart. The moment he was attacked, the bear demons had already moved in front of him. The other demons also swarmed forward, surrounding the assassin in white like bolts of lightning. However, the assassin didn't stop. After the attack, he immediately turned around and fled. His spiritual wings broke out from his back, and he flapped them with all his might. He fled into the distance as fast as lightning. But how could Xing Xian let him go? The deep and rapid chanting was like ice water exploding like boiling oil. The staff in his hand pointed forward, and a large orange hand appeared out of thin air, grabbing the assassin. Star Demon's Grip, a powerful control spell of the Star Demons. In Xing Xian's eyes, the assassin was already a dead man. As the strongest magic race among the demons, the Star Demons were born with powerful senses. It was this powerful sense that saved his life. He had sensed the existence of the assassin at the most critical moment just now. Even though he was an 8th rank powerhouse, he was still vulnerable in the face of an assassin. After all, the Star Demons were a pure magic race. The Star Demons that released magic were extremely powerful, but it was a different story if he was attacked unprepared. Through the assassin's previous attack, he could feel that this was a 7th rank human assassin. Moreover, his cultivation was quite strong, at least around 7th rank level 5. Otherwise, he wouldn't have discovered it only after the assassin got close. He even broke the defensive equipment on his body. But so what? Star Demon's Grip was the innate magic of the Star Demons. Although it required chanting to cast, the casting speed was extremely fast. It was also a powerful 7th rank control spell. An assassin couldn't break free in a short period of time, and this time was enough for his companions to tear him into pieces. However, just as the cold-killing intent filled Xing Xian's eyes, the assassin who was controlled by Star Demon's grip gave him a great shock. A strong, murderous aura erupted from the assassin's body. Then, a layer of dark golden light suddenly flashed like a raging storm. Countless dark golden light blades instantly exploded like firecrackers. With a loud bang, the restrictions of the Star Demon's grasp were broken. At the same time, on a house 100 meters away, a white light flashed instantly and fell on the assassin. The strong pull instantly changed the direction of the assassin, and he was pulled away as if he was flying. "Chase and kill them," Xing Xian roared. An orange light shone on his back, and his spiritual wings broke out of his body. The other demons also showed their own abilities. Except for the bear demons who couldn't fly, the other demons quickly rushed towards the location where the white light appeared. At this time, among the Star Demon hunters, the bear demons ran at the far end. At this time, they had just rushed to the position where the assassin was. The other demons flew up and chased in the direction where the white light appeared. As the team leader, Xing Xian fell behind. Suddenly, Xing Xian, who was accelerating forward, felt a chill all over his body, and an inexplicable sense of fear suddenly appeared in his heart. In his perception, he didn't feel any enemy or danger, but his instinct told him that a crisis of near destruction was in front of him. As a Stage 8 powerhouse, Xing Xian didn't even have time to think. His eyes flashed, and a strong orange light suddenly spread out from his body in all directions, bombarding the air. Nothing? Because he felt that his life was threatened, Xing Xian used all his strength in this attack. The elemental impact of a Stage 8 powerhouse was terrifying. It blasted out more than 100 meters in diameter. Fortunately, he was flying in the air at this time and not on the ground. Otherwise, Grand Jacques City would have suffered. However, to his surprise, his attacks in all directions did not have the slightest effect. The instinctive sense of crisis showed no signs of subsiding. Instead, it became stronger. No, it was not the surroundings. Xing Xian suddenly realized that his defense was missing one direction, the sky. It was also at this time that a bleak gray light appeared quietly. There was no sound of breaking through the air, nor was there any spiritual power fluctuation, but it gave people a poignant and moving feeling. There wasn't even a figure showing up. There was only the gray light that seemed to condense reincarnation. After all, Xing Xian's reaction was too late. All he could do now was to burn his own spiritual power. With a roar, his spiritual wings curled up and his magic staff raised. However, the all-out attack in all directions had consumed a lot of his own spiritual power. Even a Stage 8 powerhouse would need at least a short period of time to recover the spiritual power that had just been consumed after releasing an all-out attack. However, that poignant and beautiful gray color descended at this very moment. The timing was perfect, and it could be said to be perfect. It was also at this moment that all the demon hunter removers paused and subconsciously looked at the sky, because the sense of crisis had also appeared in their instincts. The sky also darkened at this moment. The sky turned gray as if it was instantly shrouded by dark clouds, and the cold, killing intent was like a natural moat. Uffed, the spiritual wings, the magic staff, the skull, and the rapidly burning spiritual power could not stop the poignant gray light from entering. Xing Xian's eyes were filled with disbelief, and his body had already frozen in midair. It was also at this moment that a pair of pitch-black spiritual wings spread out in midair, revealing a beautiful figure. It was also at this moment that a golden figure appeared like a bolt of lightning and arrived behind the black spiritual wings. A golden light suddenly bloomed from his chest, and in the next instant, the figure with the black spiritual wings that the demon hunter removers had spread out disappeared into the golden light. Only then did Xing Xian, who was still in a daze, slowly fall from the sky. His body was even burning with the unique orange spiritual power of the star demons. However, his soul had already been destroyed, and he had entered the cycle of reincarnation. The golden light flashed again, and the golden figure swept past. The corpse of the 8th Order star demon, Xing Xian, disappeared just like that. The golden figure also drew a beautiful arc in the sky and went straight for a cloud in the sky. All the demon hunter removers were dumbfounded. They could not imagine what had just happened. How was it possible that Xing Xian had died just like that? Unbelievably, he had died. More importantly, based on what they sensed, the enemy that had appeared did not seem to be very strong. However, they had done it. Xing Xian, an 8th Order Star Demon, had died under their sneak attack. How is that possible? The bear demons roared. What are you waiting for? Hurry up and chase after him. As he roared, he stomped his right foot heavily on the ground, and there was a deafening explosion. Large areas of the surrounding houses were turned into ruins. Only then did the other demon hunter removers react. 8 7th Order demon powerhouses quickly chased after the golden figure that was rapidly shrinking in the sky. The bear demons could not fly, so they could only stand on the spot and look up at the sky. They were surprised to find that the golden figure had 4 spiritual wings, and its flying speed seemed to be far faster than the demon hunter removers. In the blink of an eye, it had already disappeared into the clouds. Suddenly, the demonic bear shuddered. The clouds, could it be don't go, come back, he roared at the sky. However, while he was in the city, the other demon hunter removers were already hundreds of meters up in the sky. The sound of the wind, air flow, and spiritual energy fluctuations had already drowned out his roar. He could only watch helplessly as the 8 demon hunter removers disappeared into the clouds. The bear demons' huge bodies suddenly felt as if they had fallen into an ice cellar. They had been tricked. They had definitely been tricked. From the moment the first assassin appeared, was repelled, and was rescued, they seemed to have fallen into an intricate trap. Xing Xian had fallen, and the demon hunter removers had fallen into a leaderless state. In their anger and panic, they had completely fallen into the enemy's trap. However, it was too late to turn back now. The bear demons had well-developed limbs, but their brains were not simple. On the contrary, as high-level demons, their intelligence was not inferior to Xing Xian's. After a brief moment of sluggishness, he immediately raised his hand and threw out a kind black metal ball. The metal ball broke through the air and exploded in midair, turning into a huge purplish-black halo that spread out. This was the demon hunter remover's distress signal. All he could do now was hope that the other demon hunter removers could arrive in time, and that his companions could hold on under the ambush of the monster hunters. Judging from the strength of the humans before, they should have encountered the king-tier monster hunters of the Temple League. After all, they had 8 rank 7 powerhouses in the air. Even if they encountered the king-tier monster hunters, they should be able to resist them for a while. Unfortunately, the bear demons were wrong. Although they had encountered the king-tier monster hunters, there was another group of commander-tier monster hunters that was no less dangerous than the king-tier. In the clouds, the real main force of this ambush lay in ambush. There were 5 king-tier monster hunters and 5 commander-tier monster hunters. In an instant, the clouds in the sky had already become gorgeous and colorful. The duration of the battle was very short. Accompanied by a series of dull booms, the leaderless star team quickly perished, except for the demon hunters. Although these demon hunter removers were all rank 7, without the leadership of Xing Xian and the bear demons, how could they compete with the elite king tier and commander tier monster hunters of the Temple League? 10 against 8, there was no suspense. When the last corpse was collected, Long Haochen and Tian Qing exchanged glances. Everyone flapped their spiritual wings and flew towards the escape route they had planned. After lying low for more than 10 days, they had finally waited for the opportunity. As early as before Xing Xian and the others entered Great Jacques City, they had already been targeted. The strategy was very simple. 2 Monster Hunters assassins would ambush the opposing Star Demon team leader. Long Haochen would rely on Yu Ting's Saint Spiritual Stove to provide support from the side. Moreover, they would lure the enemy into the air. However, in the original plan, the responsibility of Kai and one of the assassins was only to injure the Star Demon as much as possible so that he could not participate in the battle. But no one would have thought that the Star Demon would actually perish under Kai reincarnation sword. The ones who were the most shocked were naturally the King tier 17 monster hunters. They never would have thought that the strength of the commander tier monster hunters would be so terrifying. Were they really rank 6? The huge gap in rank seemed to have no effect on them. How'd they do it? In a battle in the air, the king tier monster hunters fought side by side with Long Houchin and the others for the first time. The feeling was even more obvious. Almost every one of them had a piece of legendary grade equipment. When they launched the battle, their attacks were tyrannical, and their coordination was tacit. It could be said to be perfect. In the entire process of the aerial battle, there were actually 4 monster hunters that perished in the hands of the commander tier monster hunt 64. Half of them were killed. In addition to the star demon that was assassinated by Kai, the commander tier monster hunt 64 played a greater role. Before the plan was carried out, Long Houchin and Tianqing had already agreed that the 2 monster hunters, whoever killed the demons, would get to keep the corpse. There was only to talk about the rewards. The merit token would record it automatically. When attacking, the 2 monster hunters also launched from 2 different directions. After this battle, Tianqing was fully aware that Long Houchin and the others being able to kill the rank 8 Jacques leader was not a lucky thing. Just look, what did they do in the previous battle? Long Houchin rushed to the front, and the light elemental spirit attached to his back was able to display the Saint's spiritual stove ability. It directly attracted the attention of the 4 monster hunters, and Long Houchin actually relied on his own strength to forcibly block the attacks of the 4 monster hunters, giving his companions enough space to attack. And his companions, what kind of people were they? The attack methods they used could be said to be unheard of. Some used a shield as a mountain-splitting axe. Some used a big iron ball to smash people. And there was even a phoenix. The most ruthless one was the summoner. What did she summon? A heaven-defying demon dragon? It scared the demons half to death. How could they fight? The result was obvious. This was Long Houchin's terrifying 4-headed mount did not appear on the battlefield. In the battle against the Jacques demons, when the 7th King tier monster hunters saw the combat strength of the commander tier monster hunt 64, if it was said that they were shocked, then this time they were already numb. Even if Heavenly Crystal was very clear that he shouldn't pry into other people's secrets, but this commander grade demon hunt squad that clearly only had the strength of the 6th step was able to erupt with an attack power not inferior to their king grade demon hunt squads. He was really too curious. Before, he had never heard of such a powerful commander tier monster hunters. Moreover, looking at their monster hunter serial number, they should also have been promoted to the commander tier not long ago. Although he could see that most of Long Houchin's companions only had strong explosive power, but this was still very frightening. In fact, it was not Tianqing's fault. Who would have guessed that everyone in Long Houchin's team actually had a spiritual stove? The vast majority of people also had spiritual stoves after synthesis. This was also an important reason why the commander tier monster hunt 64 had such high explosive power. The 2 demon hunt squads quickly landed in the distance, at a place on the leeward side of a hill. It was unknown how the heavenly crystal was fiddled with, but a large boulder quietly moved to the side, revealing a dark cave entrance. Everyone quickly entered in a line, and the boulder closed, concealing all traces of them. This secret passage led straight to the regiment headquarters. When everyone returned to the regiment headquarters, everyone's face was brimming with excitement. One-hit kill. Other than the bear demons, this group of monster hunters were all killed, including a rank 8-star demon. This was a rare achievement. Just the rank 8-star demon itself was already one of the missions that Long Houchin and the others had accepted, and it was a mission with an extremely high reward. This was also the reason why Kai took the risk to kill it. Long Houchin, what about your companion? Is she all right? Tianqing probed. Kai actually assassinated the star demon with 1 hit, and when she launched that attack, the sky actually changed accordingly. It was really shocking. Long Houchin shook his head and said, "She's fine. Let's take a rest first." Lin Xin, who used the blue fire phoenix spiritual stove, and Sima Xian, who used the purple godly thunder spiritual stove, did not look good. It was obvious that they had suffered from the backlash of the spiritual stove, and they needed to rest. After saying that, he hurriedly returned to his room with his companions. not giving Tianqing a chance to continue asking. Looking at the back view of Long Haochen leaving, Tianqing sighed in his heart and suppressed the curiosity in his heart. It was better not to ask too much. Kai was naturally sent to the Tower of Eternity by Long Haochen. At this time, although Long Haochen looked calm on the surface, he was burning with anxiety on the inside. He and Kai had always been together, and it could be said that no one understood Kai Er's situation better than him. Under normal circumstances, even if she activated the power of the spiritual stove of samsara, it was completely impossible for her to kill a rank 8 powerhouse, even if the rank 8 powerhouse was a pure magic attribute star demons. Long Haochen had clashed with the rank 8 demons more than once, and had a deep understanding of the power of a rank 8 powerhouse. Especially when Kai launched her attack, she could hide her aura so perfectly and killed with one hit. Something must have happened. Therefore, after discovering that Kai Er's state was not right, Long Haochen had to risk exposing the Tower of Eternity to send her over first. It was too dangerous for Kai to continue to stay on the battlefield. During the course of the battle, Long Haochen also spared no effort and used the fastest speed to finish the battle and return here in order to be able to check on Kai Er's current physical condition in time. At this time, naturally, he could not wait to return to his room. The golden light shone, and the eternal melody was launched again. Long Haochen almost couldn't wait to teleport into the Tower of Eternity as soon as he returned to his room. Although they were now able to enter the second floor of the Tower of Eternity for training, they still had to enter from the first floor when they first entered the tower. Kai sat there quietly, and when Long Haochen saw her, his face immediately changed, because he was shocked to find that he could no longer feel the existence of any life from Kai. She sat there like a statue. Kai Long Haochen exclaimed and quickly stepped forward. However, he was not a reckless person after all. He did not touch Kai Er's body, but squatted carefully beside her and used his powerful spiritual power to feel Kai Er's aura. At such a close distance, Long Haochen also held his breath and finally felt a trace of Kai Er's spiritual power fluctuation. The anxiety in his eyes gradually turned into surprise. Kai Er's aura was still there, but it had become very faint, and the spiritual power in her body seemed to be completely integrated with the surrounding environment, as if she had become a part of the Tower of Eternity at this time. There was no strong murderous intent, but after careful feeling, Long Haochen was surprised to find that it gave him a feeling of being one with the world. Could it be that Kai Er's God-favored physique was about to awaken? Long Haochen could not be sure, but he had already vaguely guessed that although Kai Er's current situation could not be said to be good, it was not to the extent of a crisis. You silly girl, still so impulsive. Long Haochen sighed softly, but the gaze he looked at Kai was filled with love. He sat down not far away from her. His gaze was fixed on her body, and he carefully felt every change in her aura. Before Kai woke up, he would not leave her side. Long Haochen's guess was right. Kai was able to kill Xing Xian with one blow, naturally not by using her normal strength. According to the plan that Long Haochen and Tianqing discussed, Tianqing and the other King Tier Monster Hunter's assassins would first assassinate Star Demon. Their assassins were also rank 7 powerhouses, and a rank 7 assassin would have a certain chance of success against a rank 8 sorcerer. In the original plan, they did not have any extravagant hopes of killing Star Demon, and only hoped to heavily injure him. Tianqing, who was not familiar with Kai Er's strength, gave Kai the task of assisting from the side to assassinate. However, Star Demon's sharp senses saved him the first time, and the rank 7 assassin's sneak attack was discovered in advance. Although he used all his strength to attack, he could only lightly injure Star Demon. However, without a doubt, the rank 7 assassin's attack also attracted the attention of almost all the Monster Hunter removers. At this moment, Kai, who had used the invisibility necklace and her own rank 6 invisibility skill, floated in the air 100 meters above the ground, waiting for an opportunity. Kai was very clear that if she wanted to get rid of this group of Monster Hunter removers in a short period of time, causing the leader star demon to lose his combat strength was crucial. Otherwise, with Star Demon's strength and the irresistible Great Prophecy spell, if she really went all out, it was very likely that the two Monster Hunters teams would suffer casualties. Hence, at that moment, Ka only had one thought in her mind, and that was to use all her strength to attack Star Demon. As for how far she could go, she did not think too much about it, because she knew that Long Haochen would definitely appear by her side in time and take her away. The absolute trust in Kai allowed her to have no worries, and the obsession in her heart caused her to enter a special state. The reincarnation, Sainus's comprehension, was definitely not lower than the Son of Lights. An unprecedented state of being one with the universe appeared on Kai. At that moment, Kai only had her target in her eyes and heart, as if there was no other existence in the world other than her and the Star Demon. Absolute focus, absolute restraint, as her essence, breath, and spirit were raised to the extreme, Kai also concealed her existence perfectly. Just like what Long Haochen had felt previously, at that moment, she was a cloud in the sky, a gust of wind. Even a rank 8 Star Demon would not be able to sense her existence at that moment. The Reincarnation Sword and the Reincarnation Spiritual Stove were activated in such a situation. An unprecedented sense of stillness first appeared in Kai-Er's heart. At that moment, she only felt that her 6 senses were completely shut off, and there was only the instinct of being one with the universe. She did not even know how she had launched that attack.